So Lawrence is going to play his just random footage of Star Wars in the background for his stream, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking up stuff the whole time. So I'm going to be looking at like Rotten Tomatoes, and I was reading the plot summaries and the plot holes and things like that.
Oh boy!
I really want, like, truthfully, I want this to be a dialogue, as it always is on Twitch, with people in chat to be like, why did this happen in the movie? And then someone can come out of the woodwork and be like, oh, because of this. And I'll be like, all right, sure. Or, no, that's ridiculous. I would never have known that.
Yeah, that'll actually be ideal. Pardon me for a moment while I address chat sitting here. Hey, guys. Chilling out here with Bruce. We're going to do it. We're going to talk about Star Wars opinions. I've been dodging this in my stream for a while. People have been asking. And...
Yeah, me too.
For me, I don't know. I guess maybe part of it is just my genuine disappointment, not to telegraph too much, but also I just kind of almost have general fatigue of ingesting pop media and then regurgitating opinions about it. But no, this Rise of Skywalker is it's a mystery. There's a lot to think about.
I sent you a squad stream invite.
Oh.
So they can see.
Yeah, let me click on that.
See what you're doing.
So yeah, Bruce, I'll basically restate what you said, which is we're not going to be spoiler heavy at the beginning, but I guess at some point we'll probably put a stake in it and then say spoiler free from then on, just so chat doesn't accidentally get wrecked hard.
Yeah, this is the beginning. The beginning of this will just be us talking about our impressions, I think, of the film, and then eventually we will get into spoilers. So anybody that doesn't want this movie spoiled, please stay away from this, because I don't want to spoil this for anyone. Truthfully, I want you guys to go in with an open mind, because there is a lot of things that happen in this movie that are completely out of left field.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, kind of nodding along while they're happening. So
yeah,
don't spoil any of those. Like I want those to be new to people, so that at least they can get the full experience.
Man, though, you're right though. The movie does kind of wallop you with a bunch of new ideas and new concepts and kind of fundamentally new rules about the drama that's happening.
That's right. That is correct.
Which is one of its many downfalls, I feel like. I don't know. Like everything, this relates to Kingdom Hearts in that Kingdom Hearts has this thing where it'll tell you the rules of the world that create the drama you're watching. So essentially, a character will have to turn to the screen and say, okay, look, this character just split into two, and this version of this character remembers being in love in their past life, and that's why they're so sad now, except the character they're in love with is an apparition that is only partially in this dimension because of the experiences they had. So they have to lay out all of this metaphysical stuff for you, and then say, okay, and now this is the sad scene, and you're prompted to be sad. But when they're constantly rewriting the rules about the human drama of it, it becomes so hard to get invested in anything, and to me that's so many of the character arcs that were introduced and tried to be concluded in episode 9 hinged on the weird rules that they were introducing as the movie was going on.
As it was happening, yep.
Yeah, so about 30 minutes into the film, my mind was already you know what? Fuck it. Sure. What? Yeah, we're doing that now. Why not? None of it...
Well...
I was just kind of along for the ride. I felt like I was listening to a fairy tale, which is not bad. That's what Star Wars is. But at some point... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Yeah. Oh, so fairy tales are interesting because they start with declarations that you just have to take, There is a princess. She is in space. She's been captured by an evil villain that knows magic. Okay. You gotta just rest your mind and take those things in. But once those things are established, then you can get into a human drama, which is the, unfolding narratives, the conflict, the resolution, the low points, the high points. But when you keep declaring in the middle of that drama, for me at least, I lose the emotional investment, because at any point the storyteller can just swoop back in, declare something else, and then everything else has changed. And I don't know, it feels super arbitrary to me at that point.
Yeah, no, and so this is kind of just so chat knows. Well, by the way, chat, please refrain from putting spoilers in the chat currently, because we're not there yet. When we get to there, you guys can totally talk about it. But for now, don't put spoilers in the chat in case the people are hopping in here. And also, all opinions are correct.
Yes.
It's okay if people like it or not. It doesn't matter. But back to your point, Lawrence. So I'm just gonna talk about the way I felt about the movie initially. Because I got lucky. I got to see it a couple days before it was even released. Got to see it on a Tuesday. It was released on a Thursday night, and I didn't look at any reviews. I didn't watch any of the. I think I watched one trailer. I didn't know anything about the story, so I wasn't biased either way with the Rotten Tomatoes score or whatever. And I was like you, Lawrence, where I like the first 30 minutes of the movie, they throw a lot of shit at you, and I was like, cool, all right, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with all this. Like, I'm this all seems like it's part of Star Wars. I'm totally fine with some of the new rules they put into place. No big deal. And then as the movie went on, it started to lose me. And what's weird to me is that normally that doesn't happen with, especially with Star Wars films, because with Star Wars I know the universe so well, and I feel like I know the tone so well that I'm truthfully generally along for any ride when it comes to like Rogue One or The Mandalorian or any of the prequels. I was totally along for those rides, and like they didn't really throw anything that was illogical at you in those movies. There are a few plot holes, obviously, as there is with any movie, but for the most part, you can get past them and be like, whatever, fine, movie. It's a movie. And this wasn't it. So this was, I'm trying to think of, like, I likened it to a Transformers movie, or trying to think of another movie. I just saw like another action movie like this, where it's a very defining line in my head, where I'll watch it and be like, cool action, cool explosion, cool guns, cool laser swords, cool force, cool magic, cool. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, what the fuck? Wait a minute. And then like I gotta go and think about what happened, because I've never seen that before, and be like, why did it? What?
Yeah.
And then the movie doesn't explain it, so I move on and go, all right, well, fine, I'll throw that one away. And I'm pretty forgiving. And then it happens again, and it happens again, and this movie is a fucking rapid fire of that.
Yeah.
It's just a constant bang, 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 over and over and over, things that do not make any sense. The movie doesn't explain, and Star Wars lore doesn't explain. Fast and Furious is a good example. There's been a couple of times, like the most recent Fast and Furious I saw. I know you love these movies so much, but the most recent one I saw was like, by the end of it, I was like, they didn't explain any of this. Like, at least give me a one-off line throwing away why this exosuit works. Like.
Oh, Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah, Hobbs and Shaw, exactly.
Gotcha.
And so when I walked out of the movie and I came home to Autumn, because Autumn didn't see it with me, it was just me, I was like shell shocked. I was like, she asked me, she was like, what did you think of it? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what I thought of it. I had some genuine moments in the movie. I liked it, parts of it. But then at the end of it, I was like, I don't know what I think of Star Wars anymore. And it made me really sad. That made me really, really sad.
I agree. I felt sad and empty after watching it too. And there are a lot of, I kind of get it, and I don't blame anyone for it. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
I've seen some people say, well, maybe you don't like Rise of Skywalker anymore because you're an adult now and you don't have, like, your brain has lost the ability for fantasy. I don't think that's true either. I think Rise of Skywalker was just, if you like look at it, it makes sense why. Because Last Jedi, I kind of blame for a lot of things. I really don't like that film. But probably its biggest failure is that it actively didn't do any of the things that an Act 2 in a trilogy needed to do. So, and I remember kind of complaining about this with you earlier, Bruce, is that going into Episode 9, all of the groundwork that an Act 2 in a trilogy should have laid wasn't there. So Rey had no conflict. Yeah. Rey was not a character. And this is the protagonist of the entire trilogy, so that sucks. None of the characters had any conflict established. It was its own self-contained movie, which was awful, really. Episode 7 didn't do a lot either, because I think Abrams didn't know where the series was going, so I think he tried to put in a lot of like open hooks for other writers and directors to run with. And then Rian Johnson ignored them all, did his own thing. And then JJ had to come back in Episode 9, do the work that Episode 8 should have done, and then also do the work that an Episode 9 needs to do. And also fill in all the gaps that he left open from Episode 7. So his calling was absurd, and I think he did the best job any human could do. I think it was insurmountable, the amount that he had to accomplish in that film for like characters he had and all the stupid plots he had to wrap up.
Yeah.
So I lay a lot of the pacing problems and also the relentless exhaustion of that film at the feet of episode 8, really.
You had to get through a lot.
Yeah. I remember when episode 9 starts, and I'm still going to be very vague, try to be sensitive to spoilers, but the opening crawl, I was like, oh shit, now I know what episode 9 is about. And I was like, why wasn't that in Last Jedi? The opening crawl should have been the first half of Last Jedi, and the first third of Rise of Skywalker should have been the last half of Last Jedi. That should have been the movie.
This is not a spoiler, but they should have teased the Emperor in Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And they didn't. But everyone knows the Emperor exists. But they should have teased it at the very end of Last Jedi, because you're right, that would have been a great setup.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been like a oh, okay, so episode 9 is going to resolve the Emperor. But that's a great point.
It's and I get to some degree why it didn't happen, because of everything about Last Jedi was trying to invert Star Wars tropes. Perhaps because everyone complained about Force Awakens being too tropey, whatever. But it turns out tropes exist because people like them. They're tropes because they work. So if you just do the opposite of every trope, it turns out it doesn't work. And that's kind of exactly, I think, functionally what we've seen, is that the second act of a trilogy, it's, if we're talking Star Wars tradition, it's supposed to have some big twist about parentage. Again, they undid that. It's supposed to have some new mystery to look forward to. It's supposed to introduce stakes and conflict for every character, which it actively didn't do. And those are all the things that had to happen in the first, 20 minutes of Rise of Skywalker, and they did. I guess it's...
Fast.
Yeah, really fast.
Really fast.
And that's kind of the thing, is that, man, they had so many boxes to tick off on a whiteboard, and they ticked them all off, but it turns out there's another consequence for that, which is that nothing has room to breathe. Nothing has, time.
Well, nothing had stakes. I mean,
Yeah.
Some of the moments in the movie were emotional for me, but they were emotional for the wrong reasons. They were emotional because I was like, oh man, that's one of the original characters, but it wasn't. I didn't give a fuck about Rey, Finn, or Poe. And that was the problem. Is that and that's what I kept thinking throughout these movies with Force Awakens and Last Jedi too. I was like, I don't care about any of these new characters.
Yeah.
And I was like, when am I gonna care? This movie, Rise of Skywalker, gets you to care the most.
It does.
I think.
Yeah.
Of those brand new 3 characters, but it's still not enough to feel like the movie stands on its own with those new characters, and I think that's always been my problem, and honestly, kind of what I didn't really want from these movies. The more that I watch them now, the more I'm like, I just wish that they had given us, Han Solo doing Han Solo things, and Princess Leia doing Princess Leia things, and Luke Skywalker doing Luke Skywalker things. In addition to new characters, but they kept saying no. Disney was like, we want to establish these new characters. These are the new characters for the new generation. And I was like, that's fine, but they got to be good movies based around them. And maybe they should have just gotten rid entirely of Han Solo, Leia, and Luke. Maybe they should have just not used them at all. They shouldn't have touched them. Because they should have done a Rogue One, or they should have done something like that, where it's just Mandalorian's another good example, which is fantastic, and they're all new characters you've never heard of. It's great. They're great, and I can care about those characters in these things, and I don't have to worry about, well, what about Luke? I don't have to worry about any of that stuff because they're not even anywhere near those events. So I don't know. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, I mean, you're spot on. The thing is, Episode 7 did such a good job of introducing the potential of a lot of those characters, I thought. Finn was an awesome character. Indoctrinated since birth to be a stormtrooper. Suddenly he snaps out of it, and then he's immediately put next to this brash idiot dude who always does what he thinks is right and doesn't worry if he's going to fail. So of course, Finn develops a bit of an obsession or just a boy crush on Poe. Cool dynamic. I'm into that. Makes sense for the character. And then all of that is obliterated in Episode 8. Now Finn is the jaded guy who just wants to party and drink, and Rose has to be the new idealistic character.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Okay, you've just undone everything about Finn's character and development and arc. All right, fine. And then in Episode 9, I don't even know. like I feel like they had no idea what to do with Finn because they basically established his character and then undid his character in the second film. And now also we have Rose here, which, oh boy, she got done pretty dirty too. She had no screen time.
Completely underserved.
Yeah.
Completely underserved.
Yeah, there are just a ton of characters that all got thrown in. None of them had a direction, I think. Or rather, they did have direction at the end of episode 7, and then Rian Johnson just kind of ignored all of the director's notes that were left for him. That's frustrating to think about.
Yeah, well, with like Rose is a good example of. It's funny because like I was thinking, well, like, oh, she didn't get any screen time, and then I was like, well, if she had gotten 10 more minutes of screen time, would I have cared?
No.
I was like, no. And
well, Rose wasn't even a character. They introduced her as being the bumbling, like awkward, idealistic millennial, exactly like Finn in episode 8, and then the exact scene after that, she's never like that again. So I don't even know what her character is. I honestly don't know. She went from being like, oh my gosh, are you Finn? Which is another weird thing, by the way. Increasingly, the Star Wars movies are existing in a universe where everyone in that universe has also seen Star Wars. So when Rose is like geeking out at Finn, it's like, you were in episode 7. She shouldn't know that. Nobody should know that. And when like everyone in the universe knows about the original trilogy, and Han Solo has to be like, it's true, it's all true. How does anyone know about any of that stuff when apparently the Empire was pretty good about eradicating any sense of the Jedi between episodes 3 and 4? Oh, that's the other thing that blows my mind about like how you choose to spend screen time. So as much as I revile episode 2, or actually, love to hate it, whatever, it functionally is at least an entire film dedicated around how somebody can build up an army and no one knows about it.
Right, yeah.
They spent time on that. So I feel like as a viewer, I'm told that in the universe of Star Wars, you can't just make a galaxy-obliterating army without having some kind of like explanation behind it. And, trying to dodge spoilers, but that's one of those powers of declaration we're expected to just kind of nod along with in episode 9. That there is this threat, and it is bigger than anything else, and it just so happens no one's heard about it. But it's there, and you just got to take it. I feel like there is definitely a limit to the amount of wild fantasy declarations you can ask an audience to roll with and still be bought into the narrative. And this movie far surpassed it, I think because it had too much on its plate in terms of trying to get a narrative going.
And it's too bad because, I saw someone say, like, oh man, wouldn't it have been great if this was 2 movies? And I was like, I guess? Maybe I would have been pissed, I know that. I would have been like, fuck!
Episode 9, Part 1?
I don't want to see Episode 9, Part 1 and Part 2. Like, that would have, but it may have created a better movie. Or it may have created 2 better movies, I guess. So I maybe damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing, but that may have helped it. And then that way it wasn't cramming 2.5 hours of a bunch of shit that like you said should have happened in episode 8 into 9. I don't know. I'm not sure that I didn't. Yeah, no spoilers for now, chat. I don't. To your point about Last Jedi, when I walked out of Last Jedi, I liked it. I actually was like, that was cool. I liked how they changed a few things, and were like, changing a few expectations. And I was like, this is going to be interesting the way they try and pull this off. But also, to your point, at the end of the movie, there were no stakes, so I didn't care whether or not the Resistance got away. I didn't care whether Rose. Did you forget the Benicio del Toro's in the movie?
Oh yeah, no, I thought about that. It's like, oh wow, that meant nothing.
And it's funny because he even says, his character says that. His character says, this means nothing. What is happening now?
Yeah,
literally means nothing because I'm on both sides.
They're trying to undo. Again, it's this thing that maybe I'm overreacting to, but there is this Rian Johnson thing where he tries to be oh so smart. And there's something that people who really want you to know they're smart do, is they just do the opposite of what you think they're going to do to prove how smart they are. And that was so much of episode 8. So sure, yeah, okay, fine. The Force, that scene was interesting because of its implications about the Force or the lack thereof, or the agenda of the Force, or whether or not the Force is predestination, blah, blah, blah. You can read all that into it. But it turns out it wasn't anything because it didn't mean anything. You still have to tell a good narrative. And there are certain things you can't get away from. You can't just be a contrarian and still tell a good narrative. And that's so much of what episode 8 was.
I was just talking to somebody about Empire Strikes Back. And Empire Strikes Back, since it's in the middle, Arguably, some people say it has the easiest job. Some people say it has the hardest job. The easiest job because it doesn't have to. Same with Dark Knight. It didn't have to start any new overarching consequences or overarching plots, or introduce anything that didn't have to be resolved. So these are easiest or hardest, however you want to look at it. But that's a lot of people say that. Oh well, that's why it's the best because it doesn't really have to do much. I disagree.
And I disagree too.
Yeah, because Empire, what it does is it introduces a lot of really large, like I guess, just really overextended consequences for the entire universe that they doesn't resolve. But it's like, okay, so now Darth Vader is Luke's father. He gets his arm cut off. Darth Vader betrays all of them with the help of Lando, who they had just introduced. Han Solo's in carbonite. Like, it's a bunch of different things at the end of the movie. They're like, holy shit, they got to wrap all these things up in Return of the Jedi, and I can't wait. And what does Last Jedi do? What do they have at the end of the movie that you're like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen.
It lectures you about not trusting in women for a good portion of the film. It lectures you about how rich people are evil for a good portion of the film. I don't know. I felt like the entire movie was talking down to me, and it was trying to prove points that were already proven. And I'm like, man, why are we spending time on this? It's not a mistake that like Holdo. Excuse me, damn. It's not a mistake that Holdo is always like scowling and frowning and being severe and awful, and then once there's this huge turn that she's actually a good character, then all of a sudden she's smiling and stuff. It's meant to make you not like her. Like, the entire movie is crafted that way so it can pull this great gotcha. Like, oh, don't you feel like an idiot because you thought Poe was cool? It turns out Holdo was the cool one, except the entire film was crafted to make you not like her. And then they wag their finger at you for not liking her. It's bullshit. I don't know. It felt like the entire movie was some dude crossing his arms and smirking at me. And that's not what I go to Star Wars for.
Yeah, no. Last Jedi, I thought it was really neat how they had introduced the fact that Rey didn't have any parents. Her parents were nobody. I thought that was cool.
Again, that's just the opposite of what you think. Like, what did it matter? Did it add to her character? Did it introduce conflict to her character? Did it change the texture of her relationship with anyone? No. It was one line. It was one line of we're gonna do the opposite of what you think we're gonna do.
And it was I think they were trying to get the texture between Rey and Kylo. Like, basically Kylo was supposed to be, introducing conflict into her character and trying to get her to go to the dark side because she didn't have any parents. Whatever, I don't know. That's a stretch.
Yeah, in that case, it should have been like a father figure or something. Maybe I'm just spitballing here, but like, that's the other thing is I didn't feel an ounce of chemistry between Kylo and Rey, which makes Episode 9 really weird. Like, actually made me uncomfortable. But yeah, there was nothing. Like, it doesn't do anything. So Empire is a really good thing to think back on, because they took the time to have interactions between characters that then led to more stakes. So you have Han and Leia on the Falcon, and the Falcon's run down. They're hiding in a cave, but they have that moment, where they have chemistry, they have tension. It's there. And then before they can even realize it or even talk about it, or they talk about it right before he gets frozen, they admit their love to each other, but immediately he's frozen. So tragic. Yeah. But there's another movie to pay it off. The Episode 9 tries to have that tragic, like Romeo and Juliet moment, and I'm just writhing in my chair because none of the homework has been done. Right. You can't just at the end say they're in love and now this is tragic, because that's one declaration too far. I needed to actually see it, and Rey like getting a little sweaty because she sees wide Kylo shirtless. I mean, yeah, I can buy that a little bit, but to compare that to like the noir-esque romance we saw between Han and Leia in Episodes 5 and 6, and there's just no comparison. The only other like thing we have like that is between Anakin and Padme, and that's just weird, which is also what makes Episode 2 so fantastic. But
horribly executed. And that was another thing that I think that the stories were there for the prequels. Like the skeleton of the story was interesting and also super weird in the sense that there's a lot of government involved and like shit like that that you just didn't really necessarily want to know, but you found out about Star Wars. And the stories just weren't weren't there for every movie, for Force Awakens, for Last Jedi, and for now Rise of Skywalker. I never felt that any one of these movies had a story that I actually was like, oh, that's a cool story, because Force Awakens was New Hope. Last Jedi, what was the story of Last Jedi?
I've thought a lot about that, and you're right. There is no punch. I think it's like hope is that I don't know. Is that the deeds that you accomplish in your life have an echoing effect that can inspire others to do great things. If I'm being very generous, I think that's kind of the takeaway of Last Jedi, which is not the takeaway you should have from the second act of a trilogy, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Space horses, yeah. It was a bunch of disparate storylines that all seek to undo a Star Wars trope, which is to say to undo a fairy tale storytelling trope. Which, good fucking luck, man. Why try? I don't know.
Rise of Skywalker. I mean, if I were to say Rise of Skywalker's story, the story was that the Emperor was back. So that, to me, that's okay. That's an immediate conflict. So you've got yourself Emperor's back. There's a bad guy in the universe. We kind of know what the Emperor's motive is to take over the universe. It always has. And that's where I think that this movie falls, because I was excited about the Emperor. I was really excited to find out why the Emperor was back, what the Emperor was doing different, and how they were going to defeat the Emperor. But I think JJ used the Emperor again, because, and maybe even if it was already planned, it may have already been planned long before Rise of Skywalker. But I think JJ used the Emperor because everyone knows what the Emperor wants to do. You don't need to explain what the Emperor wants to do. Even with Snoke, you had to explain what Snoke's motive was. Because you just assume, Snoke's like, yeah, sure, he's trying to take over the universe, whatever. But I guess why?
Also, the actor is just so good.
He's great.
That dude is.
He's always good.
I need to look up his name.
Ian McDiarmid is. His name is McDiarmid. He's, in my opinion, he's a standout in everything he is in terms of the Emperor. Like, I love how crazy and insane he is. People are like, cringy, and I think it's fucking great.
It's fantastic. Well, he wanted to. Yeah. Well, and that's what gets weird is you dive into motivations and stuff. He didn't want to control the galaxy anymore. He wanted to destroy it, all of it.
It seemed like.
Which is just kind of, it's just mindless escalation. It's like, what's worse than a dictator who wants to rule everything? Somebody who wants to blow it all up, and that's it. I mean, maybe there's something more fundamental there, but yeah, I mean, the conflict exists because the hero embodies some kind of virtue and the villain embodies some kind of like terrible vice, and then you bang these against each other, and then people hear what they want to hear, which is that the hero wins. So in this narrative, the villain wants to destroy all of existence. So yeah, the heroes don't need that much motivation. They don't need to embody anything. They just have to need to want to stay alive. I don't know. I feel like it really destroys the like dynamic of interesting character conflicts.
So Bendy Straw is saying, I don't know if you're talking about Rise of Skywalker or Last Jedi, but about the constant fight we have to give into our vices. Just because we succeed once doesn't mean we will be perfect forever. Just because Luke was the hero of Return of the Jedi doesn't mean he would be without failure for the rest of his life, and Kylo wipes out Luke's order and breaks him. I think Benny Straw's talking about Last Jedi, and I agree with those things. I think that those are interesting conflicts they introduce, but the movie then concludes it. So introduces the conflict of the fact that Luke, he fucked up, and then at the end of the movie, he's like, oh, well, didn't fuck up. He's fine. And he fixed it all, and I was like,
yeah. What? Them turning Luke back into to Mr. Goody Two Shoes was really aggravating. Because I of all the things Last Jedi did, I actually really respected the fact that Luke's path was complicated.
Yeah, me too.
I thought actually now that I think back about it, Luke's story or the way his narrative ended up was awesome, actually. And I thought kind of spoke to the kind of ongoing perennial nature of the Force that it. And this is something I've been waiting for Star Wars to tackle on. It's weird that characters get very close to talking about this, but never quite. That the Force somehow always seeks balance, but it keeps raising its own stakes. So it'll make an ultra powerful Sith, people suffer. Then it has to make an ultra powerful Jedi, and they fight each other. And it seems like this is a cycle that just lasts forever. So what I was hoping is that Luke went into seclusion and like tried to nullify his connection with the Force, so that it would not create another Sith to challenge him. He kind of saw the cycle happening. They didn't ever quite say that, even though that is sort of canon in Star Wars, is that the Force works that way.
I felt like they were getting at that. What you're describing, but you're right. They didn't ever explicitly say it, but I felt like they were getting at that.
But what a cool motivation!
Yeah, absolutely.
If he's all old and pissed, and he's like, "Fuck the Force! I'm tired of this. No, I'm not training you, Rey, because if I train you, it's just going to make Kylo stronger, and you guys are going to fight, and then there's going to be some bullshit with family drama. More people are going to die. Forget it." Like, I kind of wish that where it was going to go, and then now we have an interesting conflict where the Emperor's back, and you got to go to Luke and be like, "Look, you can ignore this as long as you want, but people are going to die, and you just have to do what's right." I feel like there's an interesting narrative of like, maybe don't try to save the world, but just do what's right in front of you. And that's all any human being can do. You can't save the world, but you can save one person. I don't know, but that didn't work out either.
It didn't. Yeah. Lay's asking for mods. I noticed I saw a few spoilers in chat, so try not to. I mean, I guess we can try and talk about them now.
Yeah, it's been we've been at it for what, 30 minutes? Yeah, maybe we can go for it.
About. So, all right, Lawrence, let me ask you this.
Yeah?
What's the first thing in this movie you remember being like, what the fuck? Wait, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So spoilers, guys. This is it. Spoilers. Spoilers. Everybody spoilers. Here they come.
Okay, real spoiler time. I mean, I think it's pretty definite when a physical object transferred locations through the Force.
Okay, yeah.
Whenever the necklace got snatched, I thought that was like, okay, that's, oh boy, if we start getting into that, that's some real shit, man. If you can start teleporting physical shit just by being Force connected with somebody enough.
So yeah, so that's you're referring to, which I didn't even know was, they say in the movie, but they call it Force Dyad, which is apparently a connection between Rey and Kylo.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the Emperor mentions the Force Dyad and says, like, you guys have this Force Dyad.
Right. They're so paired for some reason. They never get into the reason. There actually is no reason that I can think of. Can you...
So, what I assume the reason is, and I don't know that the movie explicitly tells you this, but I think it's because of the balance. So, I think the reason they have that dyad is because of the balance.
Okay, so what predicated the imbalance? Because Rey didn't do anything. Ben was the one who trained. So because Ben became so powerful on the dark side, why? I don't know.
So this is interesting. Austin says
it's their birth line?
I think Snoke did it. Yeah, see, this is the thing, is that like so Snoke says he does it in Last Jedi. He's like, yeah, I did that to you. I connected you guys. And so are we saying that then through Snoke the Emperor did it? Connected them?
Let's see here. Yeah, there's some good suggestions in chat here.
Sure.
I think what it is, if I'm being honest, to me it feels real Twilight. So there is a fan community, the Raylos out there, and I think the most romantic thing you can do is say that like you guys are bonded in some spiritual plane. It's the idea of a soulmate, basically. And to tie that to like Star Wars canon is a pretty powerful sentiment. Like, oh, you guys have been bonded since birth and you just didn't know it. But your souls are connected. The way you talk to each other and understand each other. Yes, it's so deep. I kind of get the sentiment behind it. It's just not justified by any of the story until just now. So that's an awfully heavy thing to try and inject about two characters' connections that hasn't been alluded to or mentioned. I mean, I guess Last Jedi had some of it with the fact that they would just spontaneously be like connected to each other. But bleh. And also, how come there haven't been? I guess you could argue there were shades of that in previous generations. That for every light and dark side, they did have a connection and could sort of sense and talk to each other.
But there was never anything like this. From what we saw in Rise of Skywalker, and like you said, like objects getting teleported across great distances in between their physical spaces. Which, by the way, and at this point in the film, I think it's probably about halfway through, maybe a little less. I was okay with. I was like, fine, no problem. I'm good with all of this. This is no problem. I at this point, and I'll sort of describe my progression in Rise of Skywalker. At this point in the movie, I was like, that's a lot for the Force, but okay. And then by the end of the film, I'm like, it's fucking Harry Potter. Like, this is turned into
all
magic all the time. And that bugged me because I never felt like the Force was magic. You feel like the Force is sort of like a kind of like a god being or an an all-knowing conscience or something like that. That occasionally people can tap into. But the end of the film makes it feel like it's just Harry Potter. It's just all magic. And maybe they had to do that because they had to up the stakes for the Force in this. Maybe that was the point. Was because we have to show them a whole bunch of shit they've never seen before. I don't know. Do you think? What do you think about that?
I think they had to put something non-concrete in there to give people headspace to invent their own conclusions because the movie didn't have enough to work with. I think that's like if I'm coming at it from like a story crafting perspective, then there's legitimately not enough material to bank off of in episodes 7 and 8 to make any kind of conclusion between Rey and Kylo interesting. So I'll throw it to the magic hole. Like I'll just be like, here's the thing, here's magic. They've been connected this whole time. There you go. And you guys can figure it out from there. Just make it generic enough and unexplained enough. Because if you actually try to go in there and write something, first of all, you don't have the runtime to justify anything. And if you just throw it to the magic hole, the audience can do a lot of the work for you if you do your job right. So, I don't know. In my ultimate cynicism, that's how I read it, is that they had no shot of actually executing any kind of interesting conclusion between those two characters. So they just had to say a wizard did it.
And that's exactly what it's at the end of the movie. That's exactly what happened. It's like they're basically like the Emperor's like, I am the wizard and I did it.
That's the other thing that gets me is like the big deal about episode 6 was that Luke realized that if he gave into his passions and resorted to anger, he might win the day now, but it'll put him on a path towards the dark side or whatever. Rey, her encounter with the Emperor was not nearly so cathartic, I don't think. It's like... she still killed him. If we're in full spoiler territory. She just did it with 2 lightsabers instead of 1.
Well, this is, by the way, just to bring up really quick another plot hole by the end of the movie where I'm literally throwing my hands up. Was when she kills him. Before she kills him, the Emperor explicitly tells Rey, if you kill me, I will be absorbed into you. And I was like, all right, how are they going to get around that? And so then she ends up killing him, but then he doesn't get absorbed into her. What the fuck? What? Can you tell me why that happened? Do you know why?
So I've been thinking a lot about that. And I'm especially frustrated because you would think, based on the things we've been talking about with the Force, that Emperor Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, would know things about the balance. He's seen this happen multiple generations.
Well, that's true, yeah.
So all I can assume is that Darth Sidious is saying, if I disappear, there will be a new Sith. That's just how the Force works. And it's going to be you, because you're the most powerful one. That's all I could figure is what that meant. Is the Force is going to turn somebody evil. Because it
was his own lightning.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's like the episode 3 thing, too. But, he destroyed himself with his own... that could have worked... That's so dumb. That's so dumb. I get it.
But also, by the way, that happens at the Return of the at the end of Return of the Jedi, too.
Yeah.
He hits himself with his own lightning. Regardless.
He's done that so much. He should be... Why hasn't he learned? Just stop shocking when it's getting reflected. Whatever.
So when she reflects back that lightning, and I know what you're saying. I do. I understand what you're saying. I appreciate you saying that it's his own lightning, because that was the first thing I thought too. I was like, all right, fine, it's his own lightning. Okay, sure, whatever. But to me, he made a very explicit statement of, if I die, I will go into you. And when he says that, he's basically like, if you hit me with your lightsaber, I'm gonna go straight into you, and then it doesn't matter. We're gonna continue the cycle. And I don't know. That was too much for me.
So I think also someone in chat here, the best Adam, has a good point. I think it has a lot to do with your motivations for what you're doing. So if you kill someone in anger, that's different than stoically, dispassionately, logically. If you're throwing a raccoon out of your house, that's different than bashing it with a rock because you want to kill it. Right. So I guess, and Jedi kill, Jedi don't They don't always find a way to not kill. So there are ways, I think, within Star Wars canon to be on the light side but also take a life. And I guess that's what they're getting at, is maybe Sidious was saying in that moment. But why would he say that? Wouldn't he want that?
And by the way, he's giving that away. That doesn't make any sense if he's like, if you hit me with your lightsaber and you're angry.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Like he's like literally explaining what not to do. To me, that doesn't make any sense.
Also, if he understands the balance, then he knows that if there's a powerful Jedi still on the planet, then the Sith is going. By Star Wars canon, within 15 years, there's going to be a super powerful Sith born on some ass-backward planet in the middle of nowhere.
I don't. Yeah, this is. I mean, and we're just going down the rabbit hole of plot because I mean, like, I was thinking. Let's see here. Well, I mean, these are just minor plot holes, but like there's one where when Rey hits the ship that supposedly Chewie is in, she hits it with lightning and it explodes. I was like, holy shit, the movie killed Chewie. I was like, that is really cool.
Yeah, in like a pretty ignominious way. It's just like, hey, he's dead now. Yeah. I was like, whoa, okay, that's a beat. All right, that was pretty courageous.
It was cool. And then they're like, oh, no, there was another ship you didn't see. And I was like, what?
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Come on.
That switcheroo was it. I was already sort of uninvested at the film at that point, but they were like, no, you were sad for no reason. I was like, well, now I'm not ever going to be sad again. Because you can't pull that trick on the audience. That ship was there. Okay. Apparently it was there in the film, but Jesus Christ. I guess. I don't know. That's what chat's saying. And I believe him. I've only seen it once. I don't know that I ever want to watch it again. Maybe I will.
I saw it once, and I had tickets for Thursday and Friday night to go see it. I think a total of 3 times, and I plan on at least seeing it one other time, and I canceled all of my screenings because I was like, I don't want to watch this movie again. Wow. And honestly, I was sort of embarrassed to see it with Autumn because Autumn was going to come with me, and I was like, I don't know that you're going to want to watch this. And it made me sad. It made me really sad because I really love, like, I saw Last Jedi back to back. I saw it 2 times in a row. Same with Force Awakens, same with Endgame too. So like I'm kind of down to see whatever. It doesn't matter how bad or good it is. I usually will watch it back to back to back. But this was like, oh boy, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Okay, sure, the ship was there. Great.
It's still a dumb trick. Even if there are 2 ships, even if they like copy and pasted a ship into the background, that's still dumb as hell. That is dumb as fuck. Like there's. I don't think any living person can look at that and be like, yes, writing masterstroke. Like that whole, like, character you love is dead. No, they're not. That's stupid.
So, Bones texted me. He texted me a bunch of, like, because he was like, I didn't like it. Because everybody I've talked to doesn't like it. Every single person I've talked to doesn't like this. And he was like, basically, he recited all the things that happen in the movie where somebody comes back to life. Like say with 3PO, or they're like, we gotta wipe his memory. He's back. He's back.
He's back.
And then Rey. Who died? Does Rey die? Who dies?
Kylo dies. Then he's back. Then he dies again. Yeah. You didn't know the Force could do that. Hull's gone.
And to me, I was like, okay, maybe JJ is going for resurrection as a theme. Maybe that's what it is. Now, the problem with resurrection as a theme is if you use it 7 times, or however many times it was used in one movie, then eventually it doesn't matter anymore. You get 1.
Yeah.
Usually you get the 1, they come back from the dead, and that's it. That's all you get. And honestly, the Emperor was the first resurrection that I was like, sure, okay, the Emperor has been resurrected. Fine. But then they're like, everybody else keeps getting resurrected over and over and over, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. Right? No one's at stake. Nothing's at stake. And this is coming from somebody who loves Marvel films.
Yeah.
Nobody's lives were ever at stake in those movies, and except for maybe in Infinity War and Endgame, when I thought for sure they're going to kill characters, and they did. But in Star Wars, I didn't think for a second any one of them was going to die. And that also made me sad because this movie is being marketed as the wrap-up to 9 films, 40 years of movies. And I was like, well, they're going to kill some characters, right? Like, they gotta. That has to happen. And they kill Kylo, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, he gave his own life, so he didn't die to circumstances outside of his control, which is more tragic and harder for audiences to digest, I think. But yeah, Kylo and Leia, I think, are the only ones who actually, for real, maybe passed away. Except Leia evaporated, so she's a ghost. You know.
She's a ghost. Yeah, she's a ghost.
I'm trying to think of actual humans that are really dead, and you can't ever see again.
Luke's a ghost and he's fine. Yoda's a ghost and he's fine. Like, those Force ghosts are, in my opinion, sort of not part of these rules because they always come back, right?
I mean, and Kylo faded away too, so he's also a ghost. He turned Jedi at the last second. It's like switching to Christianity as you're dying. He got in. He got in.
Hux died, but nobody cared.
Oh man, Hux was awesome. Like of all the shitty like side characters that actually had a great arc, Hux was amazing. They did so much with the 2 scenes they got with him. It fit his character so great for him to be that spiteful about Kylo. That's motivating his entire character. That was brilliant. It's the one thing that fit so perfectly.
Weirdly, that character arc, I saw. When it happened in the movie, I looked back and went, "Hey, that's right. Those things happened in those other 2 movies." And it was a nice little arc for Hux. Not that I cared, but at least it was a character arc. And I was like, right, that makes sense. He went from this to this. No other characters had those well-defined line that Hux did, sadly.
Also,
people saying,
go ahead.
Like Han Solo died, but he shows up again as a memory. What
was that all about? What was that all about, man? That's something. Also, I guess the implication is that because Kylo, I don't know. Because his mom brought him some spirit cookies, that he suddenly became good?
Yeah.
I don't get it. Or that he had to see somebody sacrifice for him? So I was thinking about this, about Kylo's stakes, because up until episode 9, he actually hasn't done anything super awful. He didn't open fire on his mom in episode 8. He didn't really kill anyone in episode 7 either.
Well, I think he was the one that, I guess, him and Hux ordered the attack from Starkiller.
Okay, so they annihilated a planet. Yeah,
but like the movie doesn't do a good job of being like, Kylo Ren did this.
Yeah, he's not as like Vader in episode 4 is with his bare hands snapping a dude's neck, like while he's holding him. That's a villain. Kylo, like he has angry white boy teenage fits. He breaks computers, he force chokes people, but he never like brutally in cold blood killed people the way Vader did. So going into episode 9, I was like, okay, what are they going to do with Kylo? And they do something pretty cool right off the top. They show him massacring people because he's so angry and pissed and like full Sith. I'm like, okay, good, we got it. And then for them to do a redemption arc on him I didn't want them to. Man, I didn't. I knew they were going to, but I didn't want it. And even the way it played out was really disappointing. Just like Leia had to be like, hey, remember? And he's like, I do remember. And that was it. He's good now.
It was so weird to me because, some people are saying like Kylo killed Han Solo, which is true. Kylo shot Leia and shot Leia when she was in the bridge of that ship. So like he was trying to kill his parents.
Well, no, Kylo didn't do that.
Didn't he fire it?
No, his thumb was over the trigger and then another ship shot. I'm pretty sure that's how that scene went down, which also gave even less interest to Kylo's character. Because he had already killed his dad, but here he is in episode 8 hesitating to open fire on Leia. I could be wrong about that. I think I remember.
Yeah, they're confirming he hesitated.
Yeah, he didn't shoot. And which implies that he cares more about his mom than his dad. Okay, we're going into Greek storytelling. Again, we're in a fairy tale. It makes sense.
Butter King says Kylo killed Luke's entire Jedi Order with the help of the Knights of Ren. Did they show that?
There's that one shot in episode 7 of the Knights of Ren, and it definitely implies that he did all that.
But they don't actually show him slaughtering things, right? Like slaughtering people and in Force Awakens. Did they show him with the Knights of Ren?
No, the Knights are not even in films until episode 9, and even then they're in one shot. They don't show up again. Yeah. Why are they in the film?
I don't know. A lot of people have been like, that's another major plot hole. is the Knights of Ren are they literally do nothing except fight Kylo at the end. They fight the guy that they are apparently pledged to.
Also, why were there gangs of Sith in that arena at the end? Because I thought the Sith Order was not like that. Wouldn't they all be trying to kill each other all the time?
Yes. I mean, like, from what I understand of the Sith, they submit to their master until they become strong enough to kill them.
Mm.
So, like, they're basically like they like start. Darth Maul. He serves Sidious until he is strong enough to kill him. But that's why Darth Maul, even though he's so powerful, he serves Sidious. Whatever. The Sith, in my opinion, Sith rules are fucking out the window now. When there are no rules anymore. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people were asking when we were talking about Palpatine. How the fuck did Palpatine survive the blowing up of the Death Star and like getting thrown down the center to the fucking reactor?
I feel like it makes slightly more sense once you see Leia in the vacuum of space, like, navigating. I mean, not that makes it better.
No, that's true.
But at least there's a little more soil in the earth for those roots to take hold. What bugs me more, and I alluded to this earlier, is how did he build a fleet of Star Destroyers, each of which equipped with a Death Star cannon, 200 of them, and no one knew. No one knew.
This is, so in my opinion, this is the biggest flaw of the entire movie, which is, not only is Palpatine alive, I'm okay with it, fine, like I'll tick it off, fine, no problem. Palpatine's alive, he's hooked up to life support, totally fine. He's got a few Sith monkeys, literal monkeys, they're helping him. Check it off, fine, we're good, no problem. But he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I have endless amounts of Star Destroyers, endless amounts of planet killer lasers, and I don't think we ever once see the inside of one of these Star Destroyers. Not once. So I have no idea who's piloting them. I have no idea is he controlling all of them? No.
I mean, it seemed like at some point Kylo merged the First Order with Darth Sidious's fleet. So that's theoretically where all the people would come from. But I don't understand how Darth Sidious, with 200 dudes in robes, built an entire galactic fleet of ships with no one to pilot them. Yeah, I guess he sees the future. I mean, so they do kind of seed in Episode 3 that Darth Sidious's relationship with death is complicated, or that he has found a way to not die ever.
We do, yeah, that's true.
So in that way, also, and this is what gets stupid, is then Darth Sidious is just the embodiment of evil. He's not a character anymore. He doesn't need motivation. He's just evil. And that's fine, but they don't actually say that. You're just kind of left to think that. And then that also makes the conflict get weird, because if he is just the embodiment of evil, then are we led to believe that the universe and the Force conspire to empower him to constantly reinvigorate this conflict between good and evil?
Right.
I mean, maybe that's it. And in that case, fine. Then it's even further down the fantasy hole than I thought it was, but that's where we are. But that makes it impossible to buy into any of the human drama around it. Then it is just it is somebody sitting at their desk with their action figures just smashing them together.
So people are saying, and I knew this, by the way, people are saying, well, yeah, there's the First Order takes control of all of these Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
That's fine. And yeah, no, I remember that. There's an antenna that controls all the Star Destroyers. But apparently, Star Destroyers, just knowing something about the Star Wars universe, Star Destroyers house hundreds, sometimes thousands of people in each. And they're all autopiloted by the one antenna. That's what I'm supposed to believe.
No, there were multiple antennae because they almost shot the one, and then they were like, move it to the other antenna.
They move it to the other ship.
And then they found the other antenna and they shot it.
Yeah, and then shot it.
Oh, boy.
So there was nobody on those Star Destroyers. Nobody. Fine. I didn't buy it when I was in the theater, but apparently that's what you guys are telling me, so I'm good with that. We'll move on. You tell me who the thousands of people were in the stand. Who were the chanting people in the base of Exegol? Who were those people? Again, not once did we see their faces. Not once. And a lot of people are saying, were they real? They were definitely real. The reason they were real because they show rocks hit them. So they show rocks kill them, meaning like, oh, we have to kill the cult. Because like I was thinking to myself, oh, there's thousands of Sith cult. If the Emperor dies, who cares, right? Then there's going to be these other thousands of people that they pledge themselves to the Sith, and then they show rocks kill them. So I'm like, okay, well, and they're gone too. Who were they?
And also,
they were clones of Snoke. Somebody says they
what?
never say that.
No, and also,
or they never show it.
Yeah, Snoke had a different Snoke was bigger. They showed the tank of the Snoke clones, which I thought was a really cool little opt-in,
which I appreciated.
Yeah,
which I appreciated.
That's something. At least it's like, you know what? That's the one thing that wasn't said out loud to you as an audience viewer in that entire movie, is that hey, Snoke was a clone. Hey, there it is. Turns out you can use environmental storytelling as well as you can use dialogue spoken directly to the camera. The other thing that gets me is the absolute second they say, hey, we're going to send Lando off to find help in the galaxy. I'm like, God damn it, that's how this movie's going to end. He's gonna crest the hill as the sun rises, old Gandalf on his ship, and he's going to bring in hundreds of other people because people do care. Is going to be the takeaway. God damn it. And yeah, it happened. I don't know. It's just such a bummer to have the ending telegraphed to you so hard. They had to put a line in justifying it. So
this is Lawrence. You bring up another excellent point. They say and like it was either a throwaway. It was Lando or it was, I forget who it was. Lando, Poe, Pin, or Pin, Finn or Poe.
Good enough.
Like we're gonna go to the core, and we're gonna go talk to people. And don't worry, they're coming. And there's the throwaway line that somebody says like, "Are you sure about that?" Because I think it's like Poe or somebody says like, "I don't know if they're going to come," and somebody else goes, "No, they will come. You must believe."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh geez, yeah, they're coming." And so when they show up, I visibly cringe, like I did in Spider-Man when all of New York helped Spider-Man. And I was like, please don't try to make this Dunkirk like some amazing bastion of humanity that they've all decided to go. And they did. Yep. They didn't really show anybody in the ships. They didn't they show fighter pilots and stuff, but they weren't like, there's this it would be really neat. It would be kind of fun if they had shown the Mandalorian, if they had shown somebody from Rogue One, if they had shown like characters from the outlying universe. That would have been fun.
Or they at least follow Lando, and I know there's no room for this in the film, so I get it, but like, follow Lando. Show him trying to convince people and be like, nah.
Yes.
Although I understand that would be rough, because he has to be like, no, you don't get it. We have a secret map that's in a triangle, and we decoded it, and now we know where the bad guys are, and they all have ships that have laser guns on them, but if we shoot an antenna, we'll be fine. And then people are looking at him like he's insane, because this plot of the movie is insane. So yeah, I get that, like, they needed to show it, but also if they showed it, it would have revealed how stupid the movie is. And then I don't know, like, why was everyone cool until just then? Like, everyone seemed cool with the First Order, and then Lando goes around and says, hey, it's me, Lando, let's do this. And everybody's like, yeah, you know what?
Now's the time.
I wasn't feeling it the last 40 years, but something about you right now makes me think this is how we do it.
Ibu Beck said, why did all the ships arrive at once?
That's a good point.
Here's another like minor plot hole that I threw away when I was watching it. Someone tell me the answer to this, because I don't think you can. This is one of those ones that are unanswerable. They show Kylo and then they show, I think it's Rey, both go through this sort of like amalgamation of like nebula and machinery to get to Exegol. Because there's those Sith artifacts basically like plot the course to Exegol, and it's like basically room for one little ship gets through. Do you remember that, Lawrence? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't remember specifically like the room for one ship, but I do remember
They show them like just very briefly go through like little red nebula basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did all the other ships go through it? How do they all jump in at the same time right over Exegol? If there was some map that they had to find for the entire movie that could only allow one ship through at one time.
So the throwaway line was that the first person going in was transmitting their coordinates, so they were showing everyone else how to do it.
So jump through the nebula then.
I mean, I guess I don't know the intricacies of hyperspace. But yes, potentially, if they broadcast the location on the other side of the nebula, that everybody could just jump straight there.
Just jump straight there. All right.
I don't know, man. I don't want to make any excuses for this movie.
Let's do it. I'm in. Somebody also put in to my chat that each Star Destroyer has 46,000 crew members.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I knew they had a fuck ton. And so that's why I was like, they're all autopilot? Like, what? And fine, whatever. No problem.
I think we're hitting on the core issue of the film, which is that it asks you to take so much on faith that about an hour in, your faith is spent. And also, the conclusion of a trilogy, you should be done taking in new things or new rules. That should be the first act. The first act is establishing the universe and declaring everything. You know, there is a princess on top of a tower, and there is a warrior with a sword, and he's got to save her. All right, declaration's done. Now we can get to the story. But when episode 9, when you're at the end of the story and they have to keep telling you new rules about how everything's working, that's very bad. And that means that, yeah, there's no room for you to get latched onto any character or any drama because the rules keep shifting under your feet.
Well, there's a thing that a lot of these articles are asking, and I think this is what you feel when you watch the movie, which is Palpatine is talking to Kylo most of the movie, and he's like, hey, go get her. Hey, kill her. Hey, bring her to me. Then they arrive. He doesn't. He gets killed by the Emperor. Or not killed, but tossed off into that hole. And then she's there, and he's like, okay, now strike me down. Now don't strike me down. Now, never mind, I'll do it without you. What the fuck? Like, he's done, there's like literally 12 turns that the Emperor has done. And generally, the Emperor is supposed to be the one that has the plan. He's the one that's like, oh yeah, like, I know exactly what's going to happen if this and this. But he doesn't, at some point, he's just like, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And you're like, well, then what did he need Rey for? Or what did he need Kylo for? That was the thing that there was a lot of bouncing back and forth that really confused me, and I think confused a lot of other people, because I read that and a lot of other articles. They were like, well, why was he saying this? Why did he tell her to do this, but then not that? Why did he tell him to kill her, but then not kill her, and then bring him back? Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that bothered you at all.
It did, because I felt a similar level of eye roll. Not that I'm remotely as bought into James Bond, but in Spectre, when Blofeld's like, it was me, I did it all. I'm like, yeah, whatever, okay. Kind of same vibes, which I feel like also discredited a lot of how clever... I mean, you talked about the political angle of the prequels. You're right. The skeleton of the story was actually really good, and reflecting on the prequels, that's the thing I like the most, is actually the fact that it told you indirectly the story of how the Emperor took over the galaxy. It turns out it was really complicated and really hard. He had to do a lot of scheming, a lot of maneuvering, a lot of manipulation.
Yeah.
And then I feel like Episode 9 tried to pull that trick again by saying, haha, I was pulling the strings the whole time. But that doesn't work if you're retconning everything. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 were kind of written knowing what the Emperor did, and they reveal it in bits and pieces, which is super cool. But man, for Episode 9 to be like, oh no wait, the Emperor did it all. But why? Yeah, it always comes back to why and how. And the conflict, and this is what conflict is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a clash of will. The Emperor wants to do something, and the heroes want to stop him from doing it. But yeah, based on the conversations they have and the motivations the Emperor have, we have no idea what his actual motivation was. I don't know. He wanted to go blow up all the planets.
I mean, like you said, I think at the beginning of this, you're like, before it was that he wanted to control everything and basically run the Empire, but now he wants to blow it all up, and just like he wants the Sith to rule. Yeah,
I mean, there was that was it Project Inferno or something like that? The thing that Battlefront's campaign was about. Supposedly, after he died, he left orders to the Imperial Army to raise Republic planets, just like actually destroy full planets, because Operation Cinder, that was it. Thank you, chat. So I feel like it theoretically is in his like character. If I can't rule it, then I want to destroy it. Except he was still there, and theoretically pretty close to ruling the galaxy again. So I don't get it. The coolest thing is when you think back on something and you discover that it added up way better than you thought it did. And a lot of the original trilogy is like that. You can go back to those films and think, wow, actually that makes a ton of sense. I just rewatched Empire, and I was like, wow, there's so much about that movie that makes a lot of sense that they don't have to tell you. So the fact that the rebellion is hiding on a snowy planet out in the middle of nowhere, and that the Empire discovers them because they're shooting probe droids all over the galaxy, like those events happen, but there's no one that turns to the camera and says, hey, why are we on Hoth anyway? And then someone says, well, it's a secluded planet, it's covered with ice, so no one thinks to look here. That's an episode 9 conversation, because I guess the movie's moving too fast that they don't believe that you could follow any of this stuff. But yeah, the way that Empire, and I've been reflecting a lot on Empire because Last Jedi was such a failure, it does so much in like establishing stake and characters and motivations and fleshing out the world that just hasn't been touched on since. Mostly because I feel like people don't think there's any room in films for it, which is partially why I think people like The Mandalorian so much, because it actually can take room and breathe and talk and establish character.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the slap on face was saying that, like, it seemed like Palpatine wanted to make Rey the new leader, but then failed. So then he decided to take Kylo and her life force. It's an on-the-spot decision. That's not, in my opinion, that's like weird writing. I mean, like, it's not even really bad writing. It's just weird. I don't know why they worked so hard why the movie worked so hard for them to get together, other than the fact that they got together and kissed.
I hated that.
Yeah.
God, I hated that. That was like brother and sister kissing. And I know, and that's not uncommon for Star Wars, of course, but man, I can't imagine someone who was excited to see that happen in the theater. Ugh, it felt so weird.
It was really weird because I was like, oh, they're not going to kiss. Like, they're going to hug.
I was praying so hard in the theater. Please don't let them. They're going in. No. Like, I was clenched.
I know. I thought for sure they're just going to hug. Because, like, normally they're fighting, right? They're always fighting and, like, yelling at each other and stuff with that connection. But this time they'll be together and hug. And then they kissed? And I was like, what the fuck? Like, wait a minute. They like each other? They're sexually attracted to each other? It blew my mind.
So
I really didn't expect it.
The only thing, I didn't want to. The only thing, based on some of the things they said, I thought it was coming, is I don't think it's even sexual. I think their relationship is supposed to be like even transcendent beyond that. I think it's supposed to be like soulmate territory. They were bonded through the Force, so they are basically connected in a spiritual way. So in a way, if you wanted to be very generous, you could argue it was a non-sexual kiss. That it was just like an evolution of embrace, but that gets into weird territory when, like, I mean, you kiss, like, there's no way to take the sexuality out of a kiss, right? Because that's something that's reserved for people who are sexually attracted to each other.
I mean, kiss on the mouth, like the way they kiss? No, that's sexually attracted.
Yeah, you don't do that to your mom. You don't do that to your sister. So, again, what are we doing here? What am I supposed to think about that?
I don't know that anybody thought that was good. I haven't seen anybody. I mean, like, and again, by the end of the movie, I was just sort of had my hands in the air, and I was like, so, oh yeah, sure, they kiss. You got it. And then when, even also when the Emperor is like sucking their life force out, I was like, this is Harry Potter. This turned into Harry Potter. Because why didn't he just do that in the first place? Why wasn't he just using other people? He does. All right, there's the throwaway line where he says, well, you guys are so strong that this makes me feel great. So, because why was he not just sucking the life force out of everybody around him?
Yeah, I guess they weren't force empowered.
I guess. Yeah, he does. That is okay. Sure. Emperor explains that with one line, with a throwaway line being like, "You guys are so powerful that it makes me feel great." So fine. But and then when she brings him back to life, and then he brings her back to life. The healing thing, by the way, force healing is no big deal. It's been in video games, it's been in other like books and all that other shit, so it never bothered me. Also, it's in Mandalorian, so it was a thing that really didn't bother me at all. Force healing is totally fine. But I thought it was cool that they put that. They finally showed it in a movie. I thought that was neat. But the resurrection thing, that's new. That's a new thing. And we're bordering on like the Matrix territory, where at the end of, I think it's Reloaded when he brings back Trinity.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh.
Well,
like, you cock your head to the side and go, what? all right.
I mean, that even still, they tried to visually explain that in a way that still made sense within the context of the film. Which it still takes a walk out on a limb, but yeah, he pulled the bullet out and then he like cyber massaged her heart in digispace so that her real heart would start beating again. Like, okay, that's a stretch, and to that degree, yeah, it is okay. The Force can do this now, so it is new in that regard. But I don't know. At least the mechanics of that made sense to me. And this is much more ethereal and Harry Potter-esque, where it is like, yeah, I pushed my life force into you, and now you're alive again. Man, and the funny thing is too, I on a writing level, I respect the like Romeo and Juliet aspect of it.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
We have our time, and now it's over. It's so tragic. Except that, kind of like I said before, you didn't put any coins in the bank, so when you go to withdraw them, there's nothing there.
No, it didn't matter. Yeah. And that was my problem the whole movie. Gmart said Force Resurrection undermines Anakin's entire arc.
Oh, because he could have saved his mom?
Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, theoretically, he wasn't powerful enough in the Force, and then Sidious knew that and withheld that information from him. Yeah, I agree, but I also think you could, if you wanted to be generous, you could make arguments within the canon of Star Wars about why that turned out the way it did.
Well, he could have brought back Padme, too.
Yeah, well, obviously, Sidious didn't want him to know that he could have done that, and Sidious probably prevented that from happening. I mean, there are the theories that Sidious actually, like, Force choked Padme to death after she gave birth, or while she was giving birth, or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I always assumed that was basically he accidentally killed her. But I mean, so people are saying he wasn't strong enough. Anakin wasn't strong. I mean, Anakin was incredibly strong. Like, I guess Rey is stronger than Anakin.
Yeah.
So is Kylo?
Yeah, that's the implication I got from 789 is that Rey and Kylo were supposed to be orders of magnitude stronger than anything else ever in Star Wars universe.
So the Rey thing makes sense to me, but I don't know about. But I guess Kylo never struck me as somebody who was the most powerful, meaning more powerful than Anakin. But okay, I mean, they've never really shown his power that way, Kylo, up until this movie, but with a bunch of things you didn't know exist, like with the fucking life force stuff and the healing and all that other shit. So I don't know that I really knew that they were more powerful until this movie, and even then they're with other abilities that you didn't know exist. There were some, like, just to be clear, by the way, I thought the special effects were pretty good. I thought the art direction was cool. I thought the cinematography was pretty good. I didn't think it was bad. So
it's interesting you bring up cinematography, because I actually was a little disappointed by that. J.J. Abrams actually has really good action sensibilities. I really like him for he does these like roller coaster shots that are fucking awesome. In episode 7, when they're like on the Millennium Falcon for the first time, and the camera like swoops behind it as it does a giant bank turn. It was like the trailer shot. Amazing shot. Gives me chills when I think about it. And there were times in episode 9 where I was like, oh, here we go. J.J. Abrams is going to do his awesome like action camera again, and he didn't do it. The moments I'm thinking of are like when Rey was taking that weird pontoon out to the Death Star, and she's like going up those giant waves. I was like, oh, there's going to be a cool J.J. Abrams shot of like the camera pitching down, showing her cresting this giant wave and then crashing down. No, the camera just kind of went up to the sky and then cut to the next scene. There were a lot of moments and a lot of shots I thought that could have used a lot better action directing, and it just wasn't there. The one shot I can think of in episode 9 that was actually pretty cool was the shot when like Poe is like light speed skipping or whatever, and it's like a little further. Yeah, it was cool. It was like further back into the cockpit, and he's like working the controls, and you see the shit flying by outside the cockpit. That was awesome. And Abrams is usually pretty cool about doing like grounded action shots like that too, but that was the one. I wasn't super impressed by a whole lot of the sword fighting, which is a shame.
I thought the scene with them fighting like with on the remains of the Death Star I thought was cool. I thought that was fun to watch them jumping all around and being like Jedi and Sith. It
seemed like it was trying to be the exact, like it was trying to just reverse the episode 3 fight of Mustafar. Like, it's not fire, it's water. And then that's true. That's a little blunt, but I did get those vibes. But I'm what still bums me out, As episode 8 got really close actually with the bridge fight, but still, just that like locked off sword fighting shot from episode 1 of Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul.
Beats that.
Jesus Christ, that's so good. And episode 8 actually has some shots that are, I think, a little bit better. But I thought Abrams could do better. And I think it is just a question of like the movie didn't have the runtime for any of those shots. I feel like he had to go at every scene with a scalpel and save seconds to make the most calculated. It's so weird because I appreciate how calculated and like surgical this film tried to be, as opposed to Endgame, which was that and actually really successful. I think every scene was like
so successful.
Yeah, that film had a ton to resolve too. A lot of arcs, and it found screen time for them all.
I'm glad you bring that up because, before I talk about Endgame, because I do want to talk about Marvel versus this. Butter King said, well, the whole point is because basically, and for one life to continue, one would have to end. So Palpatine, knowing this, Anakin would have gave his life when Palpatine needed it most. Is that true? For one life to continue, one would have to. I mean, like, are we talking about the Emperor's, like, Darth Plagueis the Wise story? is that what we're talking about? I mean, I guess. But again, these are things that, like, if you read a comic or something, you would know, but not from. You wouldn't know that from the movie. There's no line in that. Anyway, so for Endgame, that's what I kept comparing this movie. I think I walked in comparing this movie to Endgame before I saw it, and that was my problem. I should not have done that because this Endgame was the culmination of 23 films and a mastermind over all of them. One guy, Kevin Feige. And these movies have been orphaned and adopted 15 times. And to have to put that on J.J. Abrams, now that I look back and go you know what? It's not my fault for thinking that because Disney keeps telling me it's the end of the night of 9 films with their marketing. But it was so unsuccessful in that compared to Infinity War. And Infinity War and Endgame was I thought for sure Endgame wasn't going to give me what I wanted because I was like, there's no way they can wrap the fucking movie. I watched 23 movies over the course of 10 years. There's no way they're going to give me what I want. And they gave me everything I wanted and more.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it. I don't know how. I just don't know how. And it's night and day for Endgame versus this movie.
I really think it's the lead-in. Like the lead-in teed up a good ball, and then those two movies dunked it superbly. The problem with episode 9 is that the tee-up was bad. Abrams was fantastically generous, I think, with episode 7, in saying okay, I don't know who's taking over this after me. I don't know what they're going to write. I'm going to give them some hooks if they want to take them. They don't have to. That's fine too. It was actually pretty brilliant. If I go back and really examine episode 7, how he wrote in things in the past, he wrote in things in the future. Any of those things somebody could have run with. But then Rian Johnson came along and was like, no, I'm going to do my thing. And then the ball just hit the ground. And then Abrams had to walk in again and do the impossible, which is conclude a trilogy that had a half of a first act and no second act. As opposed to Marvel, which actually had a million, kind of like you said, not a million, but several films that all played an integral part into getting you bought into all the characters. And then the 2-part conclusion that was done by the same creative crew. So, yeah, it's fun to reflect back on it now. And I've been thinking a bit about this too, of what will define the 2010s. And I feel like 7, 8, and 9, I think 10 years from now, people will go back and watch them and be like, oh, wow, does that smack of the 2010s? To me in episode 7, Finn's relentless millennialism of just being awkward and socially weird, but very idealistic and way too energetic, textbook millennial as the old people kind of see it, I think. That kind of is okay, it's a very 2010s film. Last Jedi being so overbearing with its social messaging, I think. And then episode 9 trying to make this 2.5 hour global blockbuster epic with millions of characters and interlocking storylines and vague storytelling. I feel like those movies have kind of summed up everything that was weird culturally about the 2010s, not necessarily everything that excelled. Kind of like the Marvel movies actually have. I think they captured the zeitgeist of this decade way better than Star Wars films did, which is weird to think about.
It is weird because I mean, it's Star Wars had so many other years and fans to build on. Marvel obviously had comic book fans, but truthfully, like Marvel made comic book fans of people that didn't read their comics, which was me. I didn't read those comics, and when I went out and saw those movies, I was like, "Holy shit! Are the comics like this? Like, oh, I'd love to read those comics." And Star Wars did the opposite. I was a huge fan of Star Wars. I still am. I still love Star Wars, but I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, and so when I go to see these movies, I'm like, I can't wait. Give me more Star Wars. And then they give me this movie, and I'm like, oh, I didn't want this.
Yeah.
This is not what I wanted for the end of 9 films. Like I could have lived without. I honestly I could have lived without this. Like I could have waited. I could have waited another year or two for them to really figure something out, or make another movie, make a quadrilogy.
Yeah, call a mulligan on Last Jedi. Like, it really did need a better second act. And Last Jedi is probably, like, there are things I like enough about it for it to exist as its own thing. But man, for it to take the role of a second act in a trilogy and do none of the heavy lifting was such a problem. Yeah, it's a bummer too. It's a real bummer to think about. Like, I mean, I'm sure you remember. I remember being a kid and just watching episodes 4, 5, and 6 and having no idea why it started at 4. And then to hear rumors about the prequels happening, and then the prequels actually happened, and for those to land where they did, and be like, well, okay, didn't think it would happen, but it did, so that's that. And then for 7, 8, and 9, be like, oh my god, are they really doing it? They're really doing it! Wow! I couldn't believe it. I never thought in my lifetime I would see episodes 1, 2, and 3, much less 7, 8, and 9. Here they are. They came and went. And it's just like, wow, okay.
I know. It's so bad. It's such a bad cap.
Yeah.
Such a bad cap on the other 2 movies. Because the other 2 movies I feel like could have maybe survived. But this is just... And I often think, well, like the prequels were reviled when people hated those movies. But in 10 to 15 years' time now, people are like, oh, the prequels aren't so bad. And I'm wondering if people will say that about these movies.
I wonder, man. There are things I like a lot about Episode 1. There are more things I like about Episode 3. Episode 2 is a dumpster fire, start to finish. So I do think that yeah, there is some anger that fades, and then you can kind of see the things that were good. So I think that'll happen with the prequels. I've always liked Episode 7, even though I appreciate that it was intentional. It had holes punched into it on purpose. But A New Hope is accidentally the same way. They didn't know it'd be a trilogy. So there are holes that are accidentally there that they had to cover up later. All right, you know what? You can make it work. It's really just, gosh, the way it went.
I read an article because when I walked out of this movie. Did you ever see Justice League, Lawrence?
Yes.
I think you're muted.
Oops.
Did you ever see?
Am I muted still?
Whenever you come back.
Am I still not?
I wonder if you know.
Do you still not hear me? This is weird.
Lawrence, you're still muted.
Oh god.
Laura.
Oh god, what happened?
Did he lose the internet or something?
Hello, test.
Lawrence, are you there?
I am here. Hold on, let me.
Uh-oh. Lawrence? Did we lose him? Well, anyways, he punched his mic. Does he know it's muted? Oh,
How about that?
There.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. I gotcha.
Oy.
Did you see Justice League?
Yes.
So that's how I felt coming out of this movie. Because I was like, I saw Justice League, and I remember like laughing at it basically the entire time because no one else was in the theater. And Autumn and I were cracking up, and we walked out, and we were like, "Boo! What a dumpster fire!" Like,
yeah.
Everything was going wrong all the time with this movie. No character knew what they were. Even Wonder Woman, who'd been already pretty well established. Same with Superman. Just obviously the fucking mustache gate and all that other bullshit was happening in that movie. And by the end of it, you're just like, I don't care anymore.
Yep.
Who cares?
You don't even know what the villain is. You don't know why they're there. You don't know what they're doing. Just a big guy with horns that the villains have to punch. Yeah.
And that's what I felt like coming out of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of characters I didn't care about fighting another character I really should have cared about, the Emperor, and did not didn't. I love the Emperor. He's one of my favorite characters in anything. And I just didn't care. I didn't care what he did. He wasn't evil. He didn't do anything wrong. Literally, he didn't do anything wrong in this movie. I don't think did he kill anybody? He electrocuted some ships, but didn't kill anybody. Disabled them.
Well, I mean, he claimed all of the villainy of Snoke. So theoretically, he inherited all the bad things the First Order had done.
But they never showed. So a major problem that I have with a lot of action movies, especially nowadays, is that they don't show the villain doing something.
Yeah, they just tell you they did bad stuff.
They tell you they did, and they usually do that because it's a kid's film.
Oh boy, I gotta use the restroom real bad. Sorry,
yeah, go for it.
I'll be right back.
Usually they got to do that because it's a kid's film, and they don't want to show the fucking antagonist killing someone. But I love when movies do that. I love when movies give you someone to hate. The best example is like the Joker, because the Joker kind of does things that are evil, but it's the way Heath Ledger acts. He acts so insane, and honestly, one of the coolest, I guess, motivations in Dark Knight is when you get to see, he's filming that guy and he's talking about like, hey, I'm gonna kill you if you don't say these things, recite these things after me. He sounds insane, and then the video cuts, presumably because he killed him, and then they show the hanging body slam against the window, right? That was all really super cool. That gives you reason. It's very personal. It's a very personal death in a PG-13 movie. They blew up a planet. Yeah, sure. Did they show anybody on the planet? I don't think they did. It was, the Emperor doesn't do anything to anybody other than say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this and all these other things that never actually happen, by the way. The only thing he does is shoot the lightning into the sky and disable ships. He doesn't even kill them. He doesn't even blow the ships up or anything. It's so funny. And again, like, yeah, Bjorn says they blew up 5 planets in Force Awakens, but the shot there in Force Awakens, they show like 7 people on a balcony, and then those people explode in Force Awakens, and you're like, well, I guess they killed literally trillions of people. But you don't know. And the best villains are the ones that do something personally evil. Like, you watch them, with their bare hands, like you said in A New Hope, strangle somebody. That's how you know they're a fucking bad guy, right? They're a bad guy because they just strangled one of the first people they meet on that ship because they won't give him information. And that doesn't happen in this movie with the Emperor. You don't know. What does he do? I mean, he doesn't do anything. He yells at the protagonist the entire time. He's like, he laundry lists of things he's going to do, but he doesn't actually ever do it. Somebody said, yeah, one of the Star Destroyers blows up a planet. That's right, they do. Do they ever show anybody on that planet? I don't think so. Do they?
Yeah, they don't even show the, like, in previous Star Wars films, they also made a great point of showing what incredible sorrow that people that were in tune with the Force could feel when that many people died. I don't think there was even a scene like that. And maybe at this point something like that would be played out, but yeah, I mean, like, Obi-Wan had to take a seat when Alderaan was blown up because of all the people. When Order 66 went out or whatever, Jedi's felt that.
Well, yeah, that's true, though. That he, like, kills a bunch of... Which is cool. I think that's neat, because then they show people getting killed. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a very personal death. And, like, they even hint at the fact that Anakin has to kill kids.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. And those are good motivations for you to not like Anakin and not like Darth Vader. And I guess even the Emperor, but it's like those are so far removed from this movie. No.
Yeah. It's also just going to the drawing, like, the idea of escalation has been somewhat exhausting. Of like, we got a Death Star, now we got another Death Star, now we got a planet Death Star, and now it's literally we have 400 Death Stars, and they're going to blow up the entire galaxy. I get it, like, there's nowhere else to go, but I do think that driving the narrative to that point really reinforces the fact that they had no personal drama to lean on. There were no stakes, there was no narrative, there was nothing. The only narrative that was introduced at the end of Last Jedi was that, yeah, the rebellion is like one ship and 20 people, and that's it. But that didn't matter for Rise of Skywalker, I guess.
Butter King said, the Emperor says he's going to control the world. Everybody agrees. Then there's no conflict, and to be honest, we don't overly see the Empire doing anything bad, and what would Palpatine do if he had everything he wanted? I mean, I think you're talking about the Empire, but the Empire was like, it's sort of assumed that it's a terrible regime in A New Hope. And again, Darth Vader immediately kills someone within the first 3 minutes of that movie. Right away. And you know he's a bad guy. You know he's like, oh shit, that fucking dude just choked that guy. He didn't give him a chance. And he does that with other people in New Hope, but then also in Empire, he's just slaughtering generals right and left. Now, they're bad guys too, but he's killing them. So at least you know he means business. He has no problem just murdering people outright. And the Emperor doesn't do that. It's just like, it's so weird. It's so strange because even the Emperor has that really neat, like that ominous sense of death around him in Jedi. When you're like, oh, he's gonna do something really bad. And he does. He fires the laser and blows up that cruiser.
Yeah, and he's like cackling in delight as all of these people are dying. That's a pretty good juxtaposition.
But in this movie, not at all.
Yeah.
He fires the lightning in the air, makes it so a few ships can't fly for a second, and then that's it.
He's wearing a hood.
He is wearing a hood. Actually, Lawrence, is he clone? What do you think? Is he clone or he's the Emperor?
I mean, both. I think the movies have been pretty direct about him being so force attuned that he can basically like push his life force into the force stream or whatever, then reappear in another body if he needs to. Okay. I do think. I mean, I think the movie's intentionally generic about it because they don't want to say anything definite and then possibly conflict with canon at a later date. But it does feel to me just like his function in the story now is that he's just the visitation of evil, and he can appear anywhere and do anything, and it can just be him at any time because he's that ethereal, I guess. Because they didn't, and I get it again, runtime, but didn't even once acknowledge like how he survived or what form he survived in. Did he just push his consciousness into the Force and then someone made a clone for him to drop into, but they didn't talk about that?
It was monkey.
Yeah, I guess so. Sure. But why would they do that? Why would a Sith ever do that? If your master died, he's dead, and now you're the master. That's it. Why would you continue to serve a master who's dead?
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Unless they're that powerful that they can control you from beyond the grave. And then you have to do so many mental gymnastics to maintain your cohesion with the events of Episode 9. And it just comes back to it's too much work. You're sitting there in the theater and they're asking you to take all these things on faith. And an hour in, you're just like, whatever, man. You feed me the next thing, I'll just nod along. That's kind of where I was the whole time.
Yeah, I got refunds on all of my tickets. I didn't give Disney any money for this movie. I got to see it for free.
I'm actually surprised that you got pushed there, Bruce. I would have thought that you would have at least watched one or two more times.
I was like I said, I bought tickets and I was really excited to see it. And things got really busy before we left for Christmas, so it was tough. But I was like, okay, well, we can still try and make time one of these nights to go see it. And then when I saw the movie and came back and was telling Autumn about it, I was like, I don't know that she's going to feel like the 3 or 4 hours, whatever it is, to take out of her night is going to be worth it.
So there's some explanations here. The planet Exegol is a world between worlds. That's how he survived. Okay, so Exegol is like not in this physical plane, which
what?
I don't know. Also, if that's the case, then I guess all you have to do is transmit like Google Maps locations, and then everyone can find their way there. But it explains why there'd have to be some dumb artifact to get there. Someone else says legends used to be that Palpatine would use clones to prolong his life and use the Force to take his consciousness while searching for the ability to become immortal. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay.
I mean, all right. There was a lot implied about what Sidious can do in Episode 3. And I think somebody else said there's a line where, oh yeah, I've died many times before.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. In terms of writing, those are just the things you put in so that if somebody asks you questions, you can just be like, I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. You don't have to know the answer. You just have to acknowledge that there is the question, and then like that satisfies a lot of people usually. But I don't know, man. There still has to be stakes, and if somebody can just turn into a ghost, there's no stakes.
Yeah, you're right. There really and yeah, there really isn't. I don't. That was the problem with this whole movie, is that there were no stakes. I don't. I'm trying to think of. Let's see here. So, Kylo Ren died. Let's go through the deaths. Kylo Ren died for good, from what we know of. And is that it?
Well, I mean, he disappeared, so he can be a ghost.
All right, sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
So he's not dead.
Leia died, but could be Force Ghost.
Yeah, Leia. Well, Leia's definitely Force Ghost. She smiled on in wizened knowledge as Rey anointed herself a Skywalker at the end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, remember Luke and Leia nodding sagely at Rey. Yes, you are our daughter. They seem to say, which doesn't make sense because they're brother and sister. So.
Somebody was. Oh yeah, Hux is dead.
Hux is dead.
Somebody was asking the question, why is it Rise of Skywalker? And I can answer that question. It's because she says, I'm a Skywalker.
Which now means that the term Skywalker just means good, right? That's what that means.
Yes, that was what I got from.
Palpatine bad, Skywalker good.
That is right.
And
and I get why, because if she took the Palpatine name, everybody like, oh fuck. It's like taking a Hitler name, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that. You wouldn't want to be called something Hitler related to Hitler. So I get it. I understand that. But you're right. I think you're getting at the fact that the Force is still light and dark.
Mm-hmm. And then
yeah.
And that name shouldn't mean, like, it's so weird because the movie's telling you names don't mean anything, but then it's saying names do mean something.
Yeah.
It's like your parentage doesn't matter, but we do have to justify the title of the film. So
they matter.
It does matter, actually. Yeah, it does matter, but you get to pick at some point, I guess.
Just the throwaway. By the way, I'm pretty sure people are upset about the same throwaway line. So I'll make the comparison of when Obi-Wan says, "Well, he did betray and murder your father," from a certain.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
That's what this throwaway line was in this movie when Kylo says, "Yeah, they were nobodies because they chose to be nobodies." When he was talking about her parents, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Fine, all right."
I was in full eye roll mode by that point, but yeah, when that line hit, I was like, "Well, we are in deep Star Wars now, where you're making a reference to retconning something to explain away your retconning of something." Also, it's weird too because I remember somebody tweeting that like, "Oh, this movie doesn't undo Last Jedi. No, it runs with it," and I'm like, "How is that possible?" No, it absolutely undoes everything Last Jedi tried to do. It undid it all. And it had to.
Didn't even pay off the fucking Force-sensitive broom kid.
Yeah.
I thought for sure that was the one thing. By the way, the whole movie, because everyone was like, what's Canto Bite, blah, blah, blah. If Canto Bite's a throwaway, it doesn't mean anything. And I was like, okay, well, the only way Canto Bite can mean anything is if that broom boy uses the Force in Rise of Skywalker. If broom boy comes and like rises up, they show him what he became, then Canto Bite means something. Broom Boy's gone. Broom Boy never shows up again.
So
never comes back.
This is me being real generous, and I do that sometimes, I guess. Last Jedi was supposed to end with like, oh, the legend of Luke has spread hope throughout the galaxy, right? Yeah. So you could say that the events of Episode 8 is the reason why everyone showed up at the end of Episode 9. Is that the tale of Luke against the AT-AT or whatever went through the galaxy and everyone was so inspired. Again, it's almost like a scene or two could have actually put a nail in that if they showed Lando talking and they were like, remember when Luke faced down the army by himself? And everyone was so inspired that they got in their rickety little ships and decided to help out. That's a way that they could have tied those things. It wouldn't have saved the film, I don't think, but...
No, but you're right. It would have made a huge difference if they had given us just one. Like, and this is the problem with the whole movie. If there were none of those connecting scenes. There were no connecting scenes to Last Jedi. There were no connecting scenes for itself at time. Like there weren't even a connecting scene from like when they jump from one planet to another, or whatever. When they jump from one plot point to another, there should have been something in the middle that was like, oh, we got to go do this, like some way of describing the action they're going to take, and there never was.
Yeah.
It was always like, another MacGuffin, and then they go find another MacGuffin, and they're like, oh, well, we need this map, now we need this lightsaber, now we need this, and you're like, okay, how are you following that? I don't even know how you're following this. It's like, if I'm trying to be watching the whole deal, how are you doing it? So.
Just gotta roll with it. Oh, it's crazy too to go back and watch episode 7 and see all of the little plot hooks that were inserted and went nowhere. Like Rey's, I guess, Force echoes, how she can sense things by touching them. All the stuff with the lightsaber, where it came from, none of that stuff was used.
Nothing. Never answered.
The what is it? Max von Sydow's character at the beginning says some stuff about like how this will make it right, and like I'm serving a princess or whatever. None of that is ever referenced or touched on again. And I get it, like you're inventing gaps that maybe episode 8 could have used and didn't, but other TV series can maybe work with. But yeah, the episode 7, for it establishing the trilogy, really did try to open up a lot of potential that was just not touched on. Not that it had to be, but it would have at least made the trilogy feel cohesive, which, boy, it feels anything but. Oh,
this movie, it really does, yeah.
And you talking about it feeling like Justice League, which makes total sense to me. Most movies feel like this to some degree, but it felt a lot like Jupiter Ascending, and that it was like 2.5 movies crammed into the runtime of one, and how that raw density at a certain point, when they're just like, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then this guy does this, and this is why you should feel this way now, and now he's got laser skates, and now they're in space, and it's just like the raw density and velocity of the film. At a certain point, it's just exhausting. And 20 minutes into Jupiter Ascending, you're just like, I don't know what I'm watching anymore, and I don't know why I should care. And there's 2 more hours of movie. Okay, I guess I'll just turn my brain off and let it roll into my head. That's exactly how I felt watching episode 9. It's just like,
man, what a bummer.
Yeah, super bummer.
Because I didn't want that to happen. Star Wars has never been a movie for me that I would just turn my brain off. Like if this was, because Fast and Furious is like that. I can go see Fast and Furious. So turn my brain off and be like, hey, whatever. No big deal. They're fighting a nuclear sub. Who cares? And Star Wars is different. Star Wars feels like a hero's journey to me. Fast and Furious feels like an action movie to me. And this Rise of Skywalker feels like an action. It doesn't feel like a hero. And that's what Star Wars nailed so authoritatively and perfectly back in 1977, is it nailed that hero mythology. And that's why it resonated with everybody, is because the hero mythology resonates with everybody all the time, and it has for thousands of years. And this wasn't it. This trilogy wasn't it. I don't even know how you fuck that up, because there's a template. There's a template for it.
Yeah.
That has existed for thousands of years, and all you have to do is follow the template.
I mean, you fuck it up by trying to do the opposite of the template, which again, I keep pointing to, it's Last Jedi. All it did was do the opposite of every beat. It just took every beat and flipped it, and tried to make a movie out of it. And the movie was trash. And then trash is so strong, I shouldn't be so vicious, but the movie was unsuccessful in its creative attempts, as far as I'm concerned. The problem was it did proximity damage. Like, it then made Episode 9 impossible, which is weird. Like, J.J. Abrams has saved so much, has come into like the worst situation and pulled it all around so many times. I really did believe that if anyone could do it, Abrams could. And to some extent, I appreciate the attempt, because I think he made the most sporting, like, fullest attempt any human could make. But I do think he needed triage at some point. He needed to just... And to a degree, I get why he may not have been allowed to do this, but he needed to just ignore that half the cast was in the trilogy ever. Like, get rid of Rose, get rid of Finn, unfortunately, which sucks, because I really liked Finn, Episode 7 Finn. Just get rid of him. Don't introduce new characters. Jesus Christ, what are you doing? Do you remember any of them? There was the lady that Finn kind of palled up with.
I don't remember her name.
The, like, ex-stormtroopers that... Yeah. Oh, that was another weird thing. How they made Finn Force sensitive and then kind of implied that your conscience is just the Force talking to you. That was what I took away from it. Well,
so throughout the movie, they've already confirmed, like JJ's confirmed and Finn's John Boyega confirmed that like the thing he was trying to say throughout the movie when he was like, "Hey, I want to tell you something, Rey."
Was that he loved her?
No, it's that he's force sensitive.
Oh, what?
Yeah, he was going to tell her that.
Oh, I didn't read that at all. I thought he was going to say "I love you" right before they died, and then they didn't, which is why he was like, "Oh, I can never say that."
Yeah, no. It was that he was force sensitive.
Well, no, but that doesn't make sense because he refused to tell Poe the thing that he was going to say right before they were going to get executed. But then later, he was like, "Yeah, I do know what she's going through," and Poe was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He was talking about the Force. So why would he not tell him then, but then tell him later?
Yeah, so J.J. Abrams confirmed that director.
That is so dumb. I respect and prefer the creator's vision of particular scenes. That's stupid as hell. It makes way more sense that Finn had feelings for Rey and was going to tell her, but then didn't.
There you go. Put the link in Discord.
Yeah,
JJ confirmed that what Finn wanted to tell Rey was that he was force sensitive.
That's so bad. That's so stupid.
I don't.
Also, how do you explain that right before you're about to die? What does that even mean? I know we're about to die, but I can move things with my mind, and then you just die.
I don't know. I'm not sure why that would come up when you're dying.
That's also the exact... Because, like, the Episode 9 is starved for moments of real human interaction. And maybe that's me being... Maybe that's me just dying for a drink of water. But I assume that was a human moment where they had human emotions and were about to express them on a human level because the situation was very stressful. And then J.J. Abrams had to come and take that away, too. No, it's more Star Wars lore. Great. That sucks a lot. That sucks even more than I thought it did. Damn.
I for some reason never thought he was going to say that he loved her because that didn't. Well, ironically, it didn't make any sense in the context of the other films.
I think it makes sense in context of Episode 7, namely that, and this is something that I actually think is pretty smart about Finn's character. He's such a lost puppy that he latches on to everyone he sees that is kind to him. So Poe is kind to him, so now Poe is like big brother. Rey is kind to him, or at least is like an anchor in this unknown world of him trying to live on his own, so now he's in love with Rey. I get that. That's like him being a weird 14-year-old who doesn't know how to live as an adult human yet. Those are actually pretty cool character moments, but apparently none of those are real.
It's funny. I took a completely different meaning from Episode 7, which was Finn uses a lightsaber, and so when he uses a lightsaber, I was like, "Oh, neat. Okay." So I understand why they're trying to tie together the fact that he's force sensitive, because he used that lightsaber in Episode 7, etc., etc. So I was like, "Oh, that's fun, sure." But it hit me in the back of the head when he was like, "I can feel it" at the end of Rise of Skywalker. What the fuck? They're paying that off now, and for what reason? Like, there was no reason. He never used it. He just said, "I can feel it." And I mean, like, actually, who was it? Didn't Han Solo say the same thing? No, it was Leia. And she was force sensitive.
Yeah, it was Super Leia.
No, it was Leia. Yeah, it didn't make any. It's just like such a weird thing, such a strange thing that they just threw in at the end for seemingly no reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was them trying to give some depth and arc to Finn's character because, again, Episode 8 kind of did the opposite. It sort of took away character depth and any illusion of an arc, which is kind of astounding from a writing perspective that you could actually undo the small amount of work that was done in Episode 7. But it did. Somehow it found a way. So yeah, I guess Episode 9, how do you reconcile those things? I guess you just make him a Jedi. Why not? Fuck it. Ugh. Yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. I thought Poe's arc was actually one of the better ones in Episode 9.
Poe's arc made sense, and like I like that he kept hitting on her.
They did a good job, I think, of reconciling him being a cool flyboy from Episode 7 and a kind of self-assured asshole from Episode 8. I thought they combined those character traits pretty well into one character in Episode 9.
Yeah.
And then they added the is it Janna or whatever, who apparently is Lando's daughter, Jenna, whatever. Sure.
Yeah. So we were somebody just brought up in my chat. They said, "Can we talk about creepy Lando at the end?"
Oh yeah, I guess he.
What was that line delivery that Billy D. Williams gave when he was was it when he said, "Let's find out"? He goes, "Well, let's find out." I was like, is he attracted to her? or was that because she might be his daughter? I was like, what the like I was so confused as to what the delivery of that line was supposed to be. And then when I got out and everyone's like, oh yeah, Jana's Lando's daughter, I was like, all right, well, I guess that's better than he's sexually attracted to a woman, 50 years his younger. I don't know.
I mean, Lando.
Remember that
Lando's gonna skis on everything. I just thought that was him trying to be, I don't know, magnanimous Lando. Yeah. Okay. I was so checked out at that point. Also, I didn't care about that character, and I didn't care about Lando, which is sad.
Yep.
There's a lot I didn't care about when all the characters were having their, I guess we're done here, conversations.
I was, on a sidebar, I was really bummed out when they were riding horses on the Star Destroyer. And...
Oh, yeah, they did that.
And it looked like the Star Destroyer wasn't moving. I think there was a throwaway line where they're like, oh, it has to hover. But, like, it kind of never moved, and it just looked like a soundstage to me every time they were riding horses on it. And that made me feel weird, because it didn't make me feel like it was a Star Wars set piece. It just made me feel like they had set this thing up, and they're like, it'll be really cool because you guys are riding on, like, a spaceship.
Yeah. You're
riding a horse on a spaceship. And I was like, no, dude, it's just a fucking floor. It's just a floor. Like, there was no context of where they were. I don't know, that made me feel weird. I didn't like that.
Yeah, it seemed like there were a lot of beats that were really cool pieces of concept art. And they're like, oh, we got to put that in the film. And then they had their like picture of concept art, and then they looked at their corkboard full of plot points, and they just arbitrarily like pinned a piece of concept art to a plot point. It said, horses on a starship happens now. Room full of robed figures happens now. Yeah, it just didn't add up into anything greater. It was a... Oh, I remember now. The phrase that kept going through my mind, and I can't remember where I heard this initially, so I can't take credit for it. But I remember there was... the quote is something like, well, you've learned all the notes, now you have to learn how to play the music. Episode 9 was so full of notes and had almost no music. It was just crammed full of stuff, but it never congealed into any human tale of interest or value.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. That's a really good way to put it. It never felt like there was any harmony in what they were doing.
Oh.
It was just like a bunch of garbage thrown at you. And I'm not sure that I've seen a Star Wars movie that felt like that. I'm not sure that I've ever seen any Star Wars film that felt like there wasn't a singular vision. Like even Rogue One to me felt like there was somebody steering the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was pretty disjointed at times. I loved Rogue One, but it felt I could see why people didn't like it. It was disjointed, and there were a lot of different characters, a lot of things they didn't know about, et cetera, et cetera. And even Solo was the same deal. Like they got they lost Lord Miller halfway through, and then they had to bring Ron Howard in. Still didn't feel too disjointed. It did a little bit, but nothing like this.
Yeah, this is a whole other level. It does feel like a very well-trained robot had to make a Star Wars film, and they were given a list of objectives, and none of those objectives were like tell an interesting tale of human interest. It was like, we have to satisfy all of these people and what we perceive they want out of this film.
Yep.
I mean, down even to the Rey and Kylo thing. I think that's the most. There is a fan community out here who wants this thing, so we're going to write it in and make it happen.
So let me ask, because that's why I love Twitch, because I get to talk directly to you guys. And obviously, Lawrence, I want your thoughts on it too. But like, a lot of people are saying that this is what happens when you let the fan community write a movie. This is what happens when you try to please everybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you, as the audience, feel that way? Do you feel like this movie was trying to please you, but in turn failed to please anybody? Because I see positive reviews of the film, and so I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're happy people. But do you feel like your intelligence has been insulted, or do you feel like, or do you feel satisfied with what you got? How do you feel about that one?
Man, that's a really good question. So I think Star Wars has very rarely been a film that has tried to like say something profound, and that's not a bad thing. It's populist entertainment. It's one of the most popular tales the story or the world has ever known, and it got there by telling stories that people like. So I think that The Last Jedi is representative of a movie that has something to say and tries to say it.
It does.
So I don't fault the movie for trying to give people what they want. That's what commercial entertainment is.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I fault the movie for, to some degree, I don't know that there's any way that movie could have been good in the circumstances it was being made in. Because I am thinking about, like, the way for that movie to be good is for there to be a different episode 8. Or for it to just ignore half the characters. And I don't think Disney would have allowed that. And to redo episode 8, I think also would not be allowed. So I think there's some things that could not happen. So I think the movie was in the place of as a commercial product, having certain imperatives pushed upon it. And to satisfy those, it did the best job it could. But I think the situation it was in, I don't think it was like, I don't think it was an attempt to like pacify the fan base, as much as it was maybe a return to trying to just make movies that people enjoy versus movies that lecture you about your latent sexism or whatever. Because yeah, after seven films, it makes sense that you might want to try something new. That didn't work out too well because when you deviate from, like you said, when you deviate from the formula, you get something that doesn't work. So, I kind of get the way it turned out, and to some degree, I think it's almost a cautionary tale of expecting evergreen storytelling from a property that established itself as telling the most templated story that's ever been told. And in a way, I think maybe Marvel films will struggle with this in the next decades. So yeah, I think there's truth, but I also think it's a bit short-sighted to say that this movie sucked because it was just trying to make people on Reddit happy. I think it was trying to make everyone happy, and people on Reddit are, part of the human race, so that kind of works out. But I also think that the mess that it walked into was insurmountable, basically. And yeah, I think its intentions were proper, in as much as any Star Wars film should try to please people.
Yeah.
But man, it had too much trash to try to pick up.
Yeah, I agree. I've thought a lot about this because you and I, personally, Lawrence, we've had a number of talks about this, which is making content for people that can immediately give us feedback. And like, I think a lot about this because not only do we listen to you guys on Twitch and on YouTube, but then we also have to have a vision of our own when we're making. So it's like we have to trust ourselves, but also listen to you guys occasionally. And I hear a lot of artists on the other side of this, and like filmmakers, television producers, that sort of thing, and people I know that will say to me, "Fuck the audience. I'm gonna make what I want, and if they like it, great. And if they don't like it, fuck them." I don't necessarily believe that. I think that there's a happy median in there somewhere, which is you've got a vision for something, but also sometimes people can tell you how to make it better. Not always, but a lot of it. But I think most of the time, probably there are a couple of times that the audience is right. They'll say something, and you're like, "Hey, you know what? I should try that." And I think I'm worried because like when a bunch of people complain about Sonic, then they dedicate $10 million and a bunch of people's time to fixing Sonic, and now everyone's like, Sonic is better. We did it. And that worries me because I'm like, oh shit, does that mean that everything now, even with somebody who's like, they have a vision and there's an artist out there who wants to make a movie and wants to write and direct a film, is like, I got this really cool idea for a plan, and then like they release it and everyone's like, this is stupid. It should have been this way. And then the studio goes, let's fix it because the audience says to fix it. I'm really, really worried about it. And I just hope that that's not something that we all think that if we get on Twitter and complain enough that they're going to change our films, because if they are and they turn out like this, then no one's going to be happy. Everyone's going to be like, well, that was just another fucking movie. Who cares? It won't be a cultural touchstone like any Christopher Nolan movie, or the original Star Wars, or Jurassic Park, or Saving Private Ryan, or like these movies that were huge that, again, required a visionary somewhere along the way to know the audience, but also know his or her product. And that's something that's important to me as somebody who creates content. Is that like I want to create content for people, and I want to make sure that people are feeling like they're heard, but also like, hey, maybe trust me a little more than you trust yourself. I don't know.
That's a good point.
Because I've been doing it for a while, and I might know a little bit. I'm not being like arrogant about it. It's just more, hey, I've been doing it for a little bit. And I don't know. I always wonder if the audience is worried about this or not. I don't know.
I don't think. Yeah, I think it's tough, and I'm not saying this for you so much, Bruce, because I know you understand this, but I'm just kind of saying this to frame what I'm about to say is that the audience is not one thinking organism. It's many different people. You are right, I think, to talk about the democratization of creative direction, because we've kind of seen what that looks like. YouTube is thoroughly democratic, and the most popular YouTube content, i.e. the content that pleases the most amount of people, is, I would say, pretty creatively devoid. But that's okay. Not everyone needs to watch something challenging and interesting and thought-provoking, but when Logan Paul is the most popular thing because he just acts like an asshole, and that's what people want to see, then yeah, maybe designed by committee or designed by the whims of the human race is not the best idea. I do think it takes somebody willing to make something that's just out of their own head. And to a degree, it kind of overlaps with another topic we talked a bit about, which is like Death Stranding. Hideo Kojima talked a lot about the divergence between making something that's intentionally designed to appeal to everybody versus something that is a little more creatively spontaneous. Something that hasn't gone through the crucible of trying to vet how many people will like it and how profitable it'll be and how many creative trade-offs you have to make for something to be appealing to as many people as possible to make as much money. Instead, if something is fueled entirely by creative vision and gets a budget and can be realized in a very real way, is a different sort of thing. And those are the things that usually capture people's attention instead of the media that is made to capture everyone's attention. It's an interesting irony.
You're right.
The problem is, though, that's impossible, like nearly impossible, because everyone's head is filled with the weirdest stuff. And that's kind of why I like when somebody is like, no, I'm going to express my creative truth, and it ends up being like a Neil Breen film. To me, that is the reality of creative expression without considering one's audience, is it ends up being a weird gateway into your own mind and all the weird things that go on in there. So when you have somebody like Spielberg or J.J. Abrams, who until now has been pretty good about creating movies that appeal to everybody and kind of tell the same stories but do it with a kind of a new wrapper, I think movies like this do cause you to sort of reflect on, well, wait a minute, just how templatized is this storytelling medium, and why did it fail now? I don't know. Those are the inscrutables that make good storytelling different from bad. But certainly, I do think that I don't think appealing to the masses is what killed this movie, because Star Wars has always tried to do that.
Yeah,
I don't.
That's true.
It's silly to think that these films were ever like an art project. Although things like Last Jedi get closer to that. I don't know. People may say that they want creative visions, but they don't, because that's what everyone got mad at Last Jedi about, is that it wasn't the Star Wars movie that they were used to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the tough thing is when you get down to it, people really do want the impossible, which is I want something new but familiar. I want something fresh but, not too different. To ride that line is impossible. Yeah.
It's funny you say that it's impossible, because I could point to the biggest franchise in movie history in the last 10 years, Marvel. I mean, they did it.
They did it once. They did it multiple times, but
they made something that was, like you said, it was familiar, but just a little bit different, just a touch, enough for people to keep going back. And that is so fucking hard to do. It is so hard to do. And I think people are always like, every Marvel movie is the same. And I'm like, in a specific way, yeah. I think you're right. I think that they're like, obviously there's the mirror image of the hero who's the villain, et cetera, et cetera. But people kept going back. They kept going back to see these movies. And then it culminated in the biggest movie ever. of all
Yeah.
time. So they did it, and it is. But it, like Lawrence, like you said, it's nearly impossible. It is nearly impossible to do that, and over and over and over.
Yeah, the over and over thing is what I wonder about. So Marvel's what, phase 4? What are they up to now?
Yeah, they're in phase. They're just starting phase 4. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like we're going to see the same discussions happen again about Marvel films that have happened about Star Wars, which is that we've seen this before. Why are they doing it again? They need to change it up, and then they do change it up, and it's like, oh, this one sucked. Why did they abandon all the things that made the other Marvel films work? It's going to get to the same spot, I think. Just caught in between trying to be creatively unique, but also not freak people out with crazy new ideas and things that are not proven to work over centuries of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see where Marvel goes from here, because this is just ultimate late game Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, Bruce, I'm curious because you read so much extended universe stuff. Did this feel like one of the weirder Star Wars novels to you? Because really
no,
okay.
No, the expanded universe stuff, like for all of their faults, they were really singularly focused. So they had one focus, and that was the main characters. So Luke, Leia, Han, and like obviously there were like the outliers, but generally those books focused on Luke, Leia, and Han. So you always had your touchstones, and anytime they were going through something weird or whatever else, it was always like, oh well, I know what Luke, Leia, and Han would do in this situation, right? And that's what you didn't have in these movies. All those characters were wild cards. Han was dead in the first one, Luke was dead in the second one, and also not at all the Luke you remember. And Leia is, a bunch of extra footage. So it just didn't. You didn't have those touchstones in these movies, and therefore they're brand new characters. And so then that's a lot to have to be like, well, I hope these new characters are fun, because if I got nothing to go back to, and that's what I ultimately kept going back to when I was watching these movies, is I was like, in Force Awakens, I thought for sure when the lightsaber's moving around in the snow at the very end of the movie, I was like, this is it. It's going to fly into Luke's hand. He's going to be there, and he's going to come in and save the day, and then Luke will train Rey. And then it goes into Rey's hand. And I was like, okay, fine. Whatever. By the way, just because I was like, and this sounds like me being like, I want to be pleased with Star Wars, but Mark Hamill said exactly the same thing. He said, I don't understand why they didn't just have it go into Luke's hand. He was also confused. And he plays the motherfucker. So, and then at the end of this movie, Rise of Skywalker, I was like, oh, this is it. Fuck yeah. They're going to bring all these Force Ghosts back together. They're going to do something you've never seen Force Ghosts do before, but it's because they're all together and like it's the power of the Jedi, and they're going to help Rey.
Yeah.
Rey gets up, and then Rey gets up because she heard voices.
So yeah, a brief aside, Bruce. How do you feel about that little nugget that they wrenched in at the end, which is that all of the Jedi were suddenly empowered into Rey, and all of the Sith were suddenly empowered into Palpatine.
Yeah.
I guess to try and make this the ultimate showdown of good versus evil. But my problem with that was, like, doesn't that kind of fly in the face of the Force? Because everyone talks about the Force as though it's something that isn't controlled, isn't conscious, doesn't have an agenda. But if now all of the Jedi are suddenly saying, no, we are collectively funneling Force power into you from beyond the grave, doesn't that make it move away from this like feeling of fate or determination?
You're right. I mean, you're absolutely right.
When they started getting into that, I was like, wait, what? That also kind of philosophically disrupts a lot of the ways they've talked about the Force.
Yeah, it did. It really did. And that's like, and it was weird because there wasn't even a visual for that. Like, there wasn't a visual for like all of them coalescing inside of Rey, other than just the voices.
Oh, if I could only have seen the screen tests of them like trying to have CG ghosts fly into her as she's picking up her lightsaber.
Well, I go back to Harry Potter. Harry Potter did so well, but there were 4 movies before it. In Goblet of Fire, when he's casting against Voldemort and like his parents' ghosts pop out of that, and they're like, they talk to Harry and they're like, hey, we'll help you, go running. And I remember watching that being like, this could be so cringy. I should be cringing so hard at this, but I'm not, because I've got 4 movies and a bunch of magic to back up what just happened. Because those are the rules of the world. And when that shit happened in this Rise of Skywalker, those rules had never been established. Never. And no one had ever talked about how all of the Jedi should go into one person and all the Sith should go into the other, and they're going to fight each other. Like, that nobody had ever explained anything anywhere near that. And so when that happened, I was like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Like, isn't it normally just 2 dudes fighting with lightsabers? Like, why is it now a bunch of ghosts that we didn't see apparently resurrecting people and having them fight each other? Even though they didn't do anything different, by the way. One shot lightning, the other used lightsabers.
Yeah.
So
2 lightsabers.
What the fuck?
And the fight, like, it's if the Force is supposed to, like, I don't know, if it's supposed to embody people and like I don't know, be the visitation of destiny, then you can't do that. Like, you can't have that what's the word? Contradiction is the ultimate term of, like, the fight of good and evil. And it's funny you bring up Dark Knight, because I feel like Dark Knight handled that really well. Or rather, it handled it by saying it couldn't handle it. Whenever Batman captured the Joker, and the Joker's like, this is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Somebody who is evil and cannot be redeemed, put against somebody who refuses to kill. It's a moral imperative, or sorry, it's a moral contradiction. There is no winning answer. So if the visitation of all good and order on the planet is fighting against the visitation of all evil, and somehow destiny or the Force is supposed to be the thing that determines the outcome of this, that's like, what does that mean? What does that conflict even mean? Of course it's going to be good. And if it's not, boy, does that ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
These are all the thoughts that are just rolling through my head as I'm trying to piece together what to care about as this movie's like barreling towards a conclusion.
Yeah, that's true. It felt like it was like a train was going to hit me. And I was like,
yeah.
Wait, hold on, I want to know what's going on. And it's like, and then it just plows you, and you're like, okay, well.
I guess we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just felt like all the air had left my lungs by the end of that film. And
yeah.
That's a bummer. Sorry, I massively interrupted. I think you were building up steam to a really good point.
I was? Oh, man, I don't think I was.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it doesn't, it's all the stuff that you're thinking. It's funny because, like, you're thinking a lot of the stuff that I just couldn't put words to. Like I told you, I was just shell-shocked.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking anymore, and that's what made me sad, is that, like, the best movies, like Endgame, made me think the entire time. Like, I was, like, trying to keep up with the time travel stuff, even though obviously there's some plot holes there, and I was trying to keep up with, like, what each character was thinking and doing, what their motivations were, because I knew a bunch of their motivations from previous films. Same with Infinity War. And so there was so much emotion in each, fucking flick of the shield from Captain America, or, whatever was happening. There's always something happening with those facial expressions and the way they talk and move, because of all the movies before them. And that's what this movie should have had. It didn't, because it had Rey, Finn, and Poe, who I had no connection at all. None. And Felicity, Kerry Russell, and the biggest laughs that came out of me were for C-3PO. I thought Anthony Daniels killed it. I thought C-3PO felt exactly like C-3PO, because he always does.
Yeah, that's super valid. C-3PO had a lot of screen time, and I didn't hate it, which is rare. Also, they still did lean on the C-3PO's annoying thing a little bit. I thought Poe delivered some good lines in that tick, but shockingly, they managed to write 3PO into the film in a way other than him just being annoying, getting dunked on by everybody all the time. Yeah. So, yeah, I actually, thinking back, the first third of the film had some good stuff in it, but man, when it... Oh, boy. When it sets in hard.
I know, it really does. I'm telling you, it feels like... It would be like if you had seen Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, but had never seen the 7 other films that came before.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like a bunch of shit that was just thrown at you, and you're like, oh, those are the rules?
So, Mondina brings up a good point in chat. Why is his arm not red anymore? I noticed that. It's like his arm's not
Yeah,
red.
you're right.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if he still had a silver leg either, but why? What? Why? Why even bother? Why? Why? If it doesn't matter, why do it? Also, yeah, 3PO considering all the new guys as his friends made no sense. Yeah, because he spent no time around them. That's a good point.
Wait, what was it?
3PO was like, I'm spending this last moment looking at my friends, or whatever. And he
yeah.
he had only been around them for maybe like an hour. His arm was red in the trailers? Really? Yeah, because it wasn't... Oh, his arm was gold again by the end of episode 7. Boy, I didn't notice that.
Sure.
Damn it.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Star Wars. Sure.
I mean, that kind of stuff. Like again, if the movie had been good, I wouldn't have cared. If somebody had been like, "What about his red arm?" and we're like, well, "I don't give a shit."
Yeah.
Like, if the movie's good, it doesn't matter. But it's just now you're just piling on at this point.
Pretty much. Yeah.
You know. I don't know. Well, anyways.
Well, this is
I was
good.
so bummed.
This feels like a good therapy session. Yeah, no, I was super bummed too.
Because I have been... Mandalorian and Fallen Order are so fucking awesome that I was like, whoa, they're getting this right. Rise of Skywalker is going to be great. Wow, was I let down. I was just... maybe my expectations were too high. Maybe that was it.
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster, huh? Because, yeah, Mandalorian's been fantastic. Jedi Fallen Order was really, really good. Kind of like, exactly like you said. And I was feeling pretty good about Star Wars again. And... Nah, I mean, at least like Mandalorian's over. That that ended. So now I can just not think about it for a while. I shouldn't treat it like it's emotional labor to live in a world with an entertainment product about dudes with laser swords and magic powers. It's definitely not.
No, not at all. Yeah.
I do think it is new territory though of these massive worldwide entertainment products. And the various journeys they're trying to make by trying to stay relevant and keep getting box office stuff. It's interesting to see the long and winding path that some of these properties are taking.
Yeah, it's sad in some respects, like it has been with Batman. Like sometimes you got garbage like Batman and Robin, and then sometimes you get masterpieces like Batman Begins, and then you're back to Justice League. So. That's kind of, I think that's the ride that Star Wars is now on.
Yeah, it's and it's funny too that you mentioned Marvel films because they basically had 40 to 50 years of audience testing with their narratives, and they've redone them so many times that the people who come in to write the films have a pretty good sample set of what works and doesn't work in terms of the comic narratives they can pick from. So to try to make new content in a property that's established itself as being a worldwide audience of everyone kind of property, but not have that test bed is actually really interesting. And now that Marvel has sort of run through all of its top tier storylines, I guess there's actually plenty. I shouldn't be so reductive. But now, yeah, I feel like Marvel's going to get to that place pretty soon too, where they're going to have to come up with new stuff, and people aren't going to like it. It's funny that DC couldn't manage to get the one right because they also have a bank of material to draw from. But yeah, I feel like this is just the life cycle of a product like this. It's funny too because I think of stuff like Disney where they tell these kinds of stories, but it's anthology based. Like every Disney feature is a new story with new characters that can kind of hit the same themes, but the new wrapper makes it seem fresh every time. You don't really get that when you're dealing with the same property like Star Wars, something that's been around for decades. So you have to keep trying to break new ground, but also make it seem the same. I'm just repeating myself at this point. But yeah, can't wait to see.
I'm either. I'm excited. Feige may be doing a movie or a trilogy or something like that. I think the guys from Game of Thrones are now off of it. I think they were going to, and they ended up not doing it. Ryan Johnson may still be on tap.
I should see Knives Out. People say it's good.
People say it's great.
I'm worried that it'll be too clever, and I'll just keep rolling my eyes at how smart it thinks it is. Maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's generally the way he makes movies.
It is
usually.
I can't stand it, dude. I tried, but There's just something about the way he makes films that makes me just kind of writhe in my skin.
Everybody's agreeing that Knives Out is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
My chat's saying
People
it.
said that about Looper and Brick too, though, and I had pretty bad reactions to those movies.
Oh, did you really? Oh boy, if you didn't like Looper or Brick, I don't think you're gonna like Knives Out.
Yeah.
I liked Looper, and I thought Brick was fine too. Like I think they're fun, clever movies. But yeah, if you don't like the way he talks to you in the theater, then
Yeah, that's kind of the thing.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, Brick was largely not inoffensive, but it's just there were things that lingered on, which is like, I get it, I've seen a noir film, I get it, Ryan, we get it, everyone gets it. You can move. Nope, we're still here. And then yeah, Looper just, it was 2/3 of one movie that was okay, and then 1/3 of another movie that was not good at all. And again too, it's just me feeling like too much of the like smarmy, self-aggrandizing cleverness is being shoved in my face. But I feel like that's me projecting a lot. So I try to give his movies a break, but I also, man, I'm never gonna forgive Last Jedi. I don't think.
I didn't have such a visceral reaction like you did to that.
I mean, it's gotten worse now that I've seen Episode 9, because I really do think a lot of what makes Episode 9 not work is the work it had to do to try to fix Episode 8, or ignore it. It had to be Episode 8 when there was none. Last Jedi would have been fine if it were about different characters and not part of the big trilogy. And even then, I don't think I would have liked it very much. But it wouldn't have caused Episode 9 to turn out like it did.
Yeah, that it definitely didn't. I don't think it helped from the way JJ, because I think if JJ had picked up the ball from where Rian Johnson left it, then maybe. But he didn't even. It didn't seem like he wanted to. It looked like JJ was just like, oh, never mind. Don't forget all that shit.
Yeah, there was nothing to work with. I wonder. Here's what I wonder: if Rian Johnson had made an Episode 9, what would that have been about? I feel like I would not like it, but I wouldn't be as disappointed, if that makes any sense. Because I feel like maybe at least then there would have been some creative cohesion to 8 and 9. At least then there would have been a message and an arc with the characters. Maybe, even though he did his best to try to undo any of that in Episode 8. Whatever. We got movies. Yeah, we got movies. Having movies is better than not having movies, I guess.
That's true. It was fun to see people do Star Wars things.
And Broom Boy's still out there, holding it down for everybody.
Yeah, that was fun. I was like, neato, lightsabers and spaceships. I like I mean, I had no emotional attachment to it, which is unfortunate, as I do. But this time around, I didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Well.
Yeah, I think our therapy session has run its course.
We've done it.
It was good to get that stuff off my chest, though, because I don't know. I feel bad saying negative things about anything. I don't want to not like something. I don't want to be bummed about anything, and I've been trying not to talk about it because of those reasons.
Yeah.
I also don't want to like poison anyone if no one's seen it yet. I desperately want somebody to go and watch it, so I can like siphon off of their happiness. I want somebody to watch it and love it and explain to me why they love it, so I can find a way to love it myself.
Totally.
That's what I want so badly.
I want that too. I haven't yet found that person.
Yeah.
So, who knows when that will happen? Oh man. Well, thanks for talking to me. It was kind of like an impromptu thing. I've been wanting to talk about it, so I'm glad you were around.
Oh, thank you. It was good. I think cool. I needed to sort out my thoughts this way.
Speaking of Star Wars, I don't know if you're around, but I think we're going to try and play Battlefront tomorrow if you want to join.
Oh, yeah, I don't think I have any plans, so yeah, I can get it installed.
Oh, yeah, download it now. It's huge. But I'm telling you, it's a renaissance for this game. It's back. Everybody says it's back. So, okay. I'm serious. Everybody's talking about how it's bad. It's not,
man.
Joking.
Every time I play Battlefront, there's an explosion of Star Wars sounds, and then I die, and then I hit spawn, and then I die. I mean, it's absurd, and I somehow have a good time every time, but man, I never have any clue what's going on. So
yeah, no, that's true. Hopefully you enjoy because Jacob will be there, and hopefully we get Omar over there. I don't know, we'll see.
Cool. All right, I'm in.
I'll text tomorrow.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess I'll talk to you then.
See you then, Lawrence.
All right. See you, man.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Bloop. All right, chat. It's us now. It's just you and I. Which is to say, we're basically done. So yeah, I'm gonna call it there. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for inputting your comments and your questions and stuff like that. If any of you liked episode 9, hit me up. Tell me how to like it, because I've been struggling with that. Yeah, no Witcher tonight. It's late. It's late. I'll be back tomorrow though. I'm gonna be playing, I guess, Battlefront. Some more stuff. I really liked Mandalorian. I thought the conclusion was there were some very convenient things and things that didn't make sense about the finale, but I won't talk about it because people might not see it yet. But you know what? It's TV. It didn't ask me to assume as much to buy into the drama as episode 9 did. So there you go. All right. Thank you guys again. Appreciate it. And catch you next time. Thank you guys for hanging out.